Welcome to the next episode of the AV Experience. My name is Ryan. I'm joined as always by Jonathan and Bob. Bob, we need a headshot for you.
Yep.
One day, he will grace with us or be with us on the thumbnails. But today is not that day. Hopefully, everybody's had a good week so far. We're doing it on Friday instead of Saturday. We've got some things to talk about. As the title says, today's episode is going to be about seeing and then unseeing. Is that possible? Probably not. Definitely not. And we're going to explain why. But first, we're going to jump into how everybody's been. Jonathan, your subwoofers are in a different location. You have all of your phalanges in your hands and your arms.
I moved these over here just to like shake up things because people were always talking about how they sat in the same place for months. Now you can't say that.
They keep moving. They keep moving. Now it's some like lily pad game for the kids, like one subwoofer to the next subwoofer.
I did put an empty one there to let me make that larger if I can. Let's see if we can figure it out. So there is an empty one there to kind of showcase how it will look.
I didn't realize there was a step. That's cool.
Yeah.
Is that part of the box?
They're 44 inches wide. There's 3 of them. So they'll expand the entire length. And I'll probably make another little step that's kind of got a little bit of a curve on the end of it, maybe.
But is that part of the interior volume for the sub, or is it?
Yes, that riser is part of it. That's 6.25-ish cubic foot sealed boxes. And reclining mechanism won't hit it at all. So it's a good win. And I don't hit my shin. Like you can see how much further the regular boxes stick out in the back, the black boxes. Those were shin issues before, and that you can't hit your shin on this unless you really try. So we're good.
No, that's great. I mean, you used to be quite a reach to get up into the secondary sets of seats.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be kind of like hands back, jump, and then you would jump up and you'd be in the back. But now,
to be fair, that was the riser that was back there before. If I could aim my thumb the right way, there we go.
Don't ruin my fun, Jonathan.
I think the first time I came over to your house, those back row were sitting on top of cinder blocks.
Yeah,
and you had like cinder blocks for a while.
I was terrified the chair was going to fall over every time I climbed into it.
That's the proper way to do it.
Mount the tactile transducer. I needed easy access to keep.
That's the proper way to do an open baffle. Then you have all of that extra air underneath the seat that you can use. I mean, it's suspended. That's the way to do it. We need to start advertising that and sell like audiophile cinder blocks for room isolation.
A lot of experience with them.
Yeah,
I liked your face when I pulled one of the panels off over the weekend, and you saw cinder blocks behind the wall in the experience center. He looked at me and goes, "What are those?" They're cinder blocks.
Where do you have them? In the back?
All of the surround speakers are sitting on cinder blocks.
Yeah. Inert.
Originally they were on, I made these shelves for them, and then I'm just like, this is stupid. These things weigh 60 pounds. And then I came home one day and walked in the door carrying 2 cinder blocks, and I just got this look from my wife. Like, what are you doing now? Why are there cinder blocks going into the basement? And
see, we should have brought those ones back from Chicago.
No, absolutely not. They should not have come back from Chicago. They almost didn't go back to Home Depot. That was a mess. But anyway, Jonathan, back to you. You've been busy with family making these things.
Yeah, my father-in-law helped me build the boxes. We spent about 6 days on this. Like 2 days were partial and like 4 days were full. Like it took us a long time. I'm not very fast. I was probably slowing him down. But it was nice. We learned a lot. Had to go to Home Depot a lot of times.
How many trips? What was the maximum you went in a day?
No, like total, like 4 or 5.
Oh, that's not bad.
Ridiculous.
That's not awful.
I assumed we do 2 or 3, but
you're doing the project wrong if you don't go to Home Depot, get back and go, crap, I forgot something, and immediately have to go back again.
Yeah, every couple hours until they know your
project is not on course if that is not happening.
We needed one more sheet of plywood. We made all the cut lists, mastered them out, and thought we had it real tight, and then we made a mistake on one of the cuts and had to get another sheet. So
that's what happens. Mm-hmm. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Bob, how have you been?
I've been good. It's I've been playing around at your house too much.
I'm sorry.
Watch that. It was nice to actually watch a movie for the first time ever, in a full-length movie in your theater without just watching demo clips or listening to music.
It's different.
It was a neat experience. I think it was the first time I've actually sat still and watched an entire movie in someone else's theater.
It's much more enjoyable when you do that and you're not playing like doom scrolling on your phone with demo clips. It's how I feel sometimes when I'm going through demo clips. I'm like, I'm doom scrolling. I keep going, and I'm getting nothing, but I keep going. So that was your week? Nothing else? Nothing exciting?
There were some other things. I have an old dog who got into some food that he probably shouldn't have, and has been having. Yeah, so that took up a lot of time.
Nice surprises.
So I won't go further into that one because I don't think anyone wants to hear about it.
No, it's okay. My dog will probably hear that and be like, "My turn," and then that'll be my night.
Yeah.
For me, it was getting 4K 120 working on the Griffin. That was very exciting. That was, I think I sent Bob down a rabbit hole that he didn't know he was going to go down. So he did. We'll talk about that later because I think it goes right into seeing and you can't unsee. Let's talk about the movie. I really want to know what Jonathan thinks about this movie. I don't know. I don't know what Jonathan's taste in movies is.
You kind
good or bad? Not really. I mean, I know it's not Godzilla and it's not Pacific Rim. So this movie was,
and it's not Overlord either. I'll tell you. You told me to be careful with the volume because it had a lot of bass at the beginning. So I started at -8, and by the end of the movie, I was at -41. And it wasn't because of the bass. It was because I can't handle that much scariness. My heart was I was like so unnerved. Like it's one of those movies where I'm walking up the stairs in the night, like looking behind me, like holy crap, this is too much.
I told you. It was not what you expected, was it?
No.
No.
I knew the first time they showed the little skull in the forest what we were up against, but I didn't know before that.
Yes. Did your wife watch it with you?
No, it was just me. I really honestly thought about turning it off twice. Because
But the intro's cool.
It is a cool movie. Like it's just too scary for me. And it's kind of over the top in a lot of ways too. But
it is over the top. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. But let's talk about the intro because that's the most important part of this entire movie. What do you think of the intro?
I really liked it.
Yeah.
Although I was watching on 5.1 from Plex. So I don't know that I had the best quality or whatnot. It was upmixed. At the very beginning of the movie, in the plane, when it looked like who was that? Who was the drill sergeant that was yelling? Was that a comedian?
I don't know his name.
The black guy at the beginning that was the drill sergeant guy. I thought he looked familiar. At any rate, his voice sounded kind of boxy to me, and I thought, oh, what's going on with my settings? But then it was never anything else the rest of the movie, just his voice. I don't know what to make of that. That's really, really rare for me to experience anything boxy in my room. So it could have just been the track or Plex hadn't streamed it or something, the bandwidth or whatever. I don't know.
Bob watched it at my house. What did we watch it in? What was this?
Should have been Atmos. He was in, maybe. He was in Old Dads and Inspection. Yeah.
What's the name of the guy? I didn't look it up.
Bokeem Woodbine or Woodbean.
Okay.
So we indeed watched it in Atmos. We didn't watch it in 5.1. It was Atmos.
It had good sound even upmixed, I thought.
It did.
It did. It had very good sound.
It was a little bit more intense in Atmos. I tried both ways when I got home.
And the music, the score was really neat too. I liked the score. That's one of the reasons I kept going too. Is like they did a really good job with the music and audio.
All right, what did you jump when he stepped on the landmine?
Yes, of course.
I'm just imagining Jonathan going
so hard my shoulder hurt,
and then immediately goes for the subwoofer volume. Like that's the first thing he does. It's just instinctive turn down.
I'm not kidding. I flinched so hard my shoulder hurt.
So we need to start picking movies with big jump scares. The next.
I can't handle it. That's why. I mean, that's literally why the volume kept going down because I was like, I'm like leaning in my seat. The volume keeps keeping down. Please, no more jump scares.
I'd laugh so hard if Megan was sitting at the top of the stairs just and just kept turning the volume back up as you were slinking lower and lower to your chair.
Just get the Apple remote out.
Yeah.
That would have been a disaster.
Turn it up to 11.
A disaster.
We watched it at Reference at Ryan's, and it was a little.
Oh man,
It was a lot.
I would
It
have
was a
actually
lot.
screamed, I think, if I was watching that at reference. Like literally,
Just the airplane scene.
We both
turned it
jumped
back
at the
down.
landmine. Like we both like, whoa, because it was totally unexpected. He did a really good job. J.J. Abrams did a really good job of just, especially at the beginning, towards the end, it got a little bit more predictable.
Mhm.
But at the beginning, it was very, you had no idea what to expect, which was great. But then it kind of turned into, Bob put it pretty well. It felt like you were watching Wolfenstein the movie.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking this is like a old game. Like you're a game character here in a lot of this way.
When they came around the
Wolfenstein was
corner and saw the church up on the hill with the radio tower next to it, I mean, it was,
Or Far Cry. Far Cry came to mind a little bit too, in that kind of environment of just kind
Gary
of.
poses a good question. Why have all those subs in your seats if it doesn't feel like a landmine? If you're not going to experience it, Jonathan, why are you doing this?
So, I mean, it's not just me. My wife said she used to like scary movies, but when you're in when you're really in a room that can show off, like she doesn't, same way. We just don't like it anymore. It's too much. It's like, it's too frightening. It takes the realism aspect one level too far.
See, I don't really consider movies like Overlord horror.
You don't?
That's definitely horror. It falls into the same realm as A Quiet Place, or they're like borderline thriller, kind of sci-fi, sort of horror
stuff in there that makes it obviously in the horror category to me.
Like, yeah, I mean, I could see where you go in that it's like watching like the Reanimator or any of those kind of things where it's got the kind of hokey pseudoscience horror aspect of it. But I liked it a lot. I mean,
yeah, I enjoyed it.
My wife hasn't watched it yet. She hasn't had, she's gone to bed early this last couple nights, so she hasn't had time. And I did wind up buying it just to watch again. I think she'll like it a lot because she loves those kind of movies. I just don't want her to watch it like on her phone beforehand.
That ruins it. Did you like A Quiet Place, Jonathan? Have you even seen it?
I haven't seen that one yet. Only all the demo clips. I probably have seen all the scariest parts though, because everyone uses it for demos.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't seen it either.
That's not my style of movie. Like I purposely steer clear of that kind of stuff.
But it's so good. It is so good. Like forget the horror part of it. The storytelling in something like A Quiet Place, there's so little dialogue. It's the emotion that gets you. It's the storytelling, the just grabbing you and pulling you into an immersive experience. Like I don't care what the genre is. If a movie can do that, I'm all about it. All about it. I don't care about the genre. I didn't even know Overlord was a horror until Bob's like, "Oh, look, it's a horror." And he saw that. I'm like, "Crap." Now he knows.
Well, I also saw J.J. Abrams too.
Well, I mean, J.J. Abrams could indicate that maybe a Transformer Optimus Prime is going to come out of the corner of a World War II movie and explosions everywhere. And I mean that
there were plenty of explosions.
There were plenty of explosions.
Has J.J. Abrams come off his lens flare kick? I didn't notice a whole lot of lens flares last night.
There was not a lot in there.
I didn't feel like that movie felt very J.J. Abrams.
Maybe it did. I liked it. I liked the effects side of it. I thought they were done pretty well. I didn't love the sounds of the gunfire. They were too explosion-y.
Yeah.
And over the top. It was one of the first movies that I'd seen in a while that I really appreciated the fact that every time a character picked up a weapon, they didn't just rack the slide or cycle the action and eject a shell or eject a round. Like they opened the chamber, did a press check, verified that it was loaded, and then closed it back up.
Oh, you mean like they were actually in the military and were trying to do something?
It was like they knew how to use a weapon, as opposed to everything else where they grab a shotgun and they just, pump the shotgun because that's what we do in movies.
Yeah. I'm immediately down one round.
There was a minute amount of plot immunity, though, for some of the characters that were getting in the gunfights, and all the bullets were missing them. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
It's a movie. Yes.
It is a movie.
But like that I appreciated because like you never see that in Hollywood movies. Everyone just picks up a gun and the first thing they do is they rack the slide. Mm-hmm. Why?
Yeah.
It was like the first thing he did after he got out of the water was he dumped the water out of his magazine, put it back in, and made his weapon ready. I mean, that was a cool little touch that you just miss in a lot of movies.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of the movie? Intro?
I thought the intro was really good. I liked the stuff in the lab once they actually kind of got back in and saw all the experiments. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really cool setup for it. It wasn't too like over the top. It was just vague enough in what they were doing that it didn't really make it seem.
It didn't introduce plot holes because there wasn't enough talked about to introduce a plot hole.
Right. It didn't seem fanciful enough.
Yeah.
That, you know, but
I thought it was interesting that they didn't use subtitles to let you understand the foreign characters, but you still got the gist of what they were meaning, of course, and saying from their acting and from their, you know, just presence and so forth.
Well, some games do that, don't they? Didn't Wolfenstein do that on like the hardest difficulties or something where you couldn't understand? Some
Far
games
Cry
do
did.
that. Far Cry.
The
That's
North
what it
Koreans
was.
were only speaking Korean.
Yeah. And I think Crysis did that too.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Crysis, I think you're right. I think it's Crysis.
Yeah. On the hardest difficulties, you couldn't understand what anybody was saying. So that was, I appreciated that. It felt more realistic. Like it just was immersive. I didn't know what they were saying and it kept you guessing.
And you didn't really need to know either because you figured it out. I mean, it was
Story was great. Special effects were great.
Yeah, I loved it visually.
And I also liked that it kept the good guys weren't immune to bad things happening. Like it was bad things kept happening to the good guys. There was only one guy that was kind of immune to bad things happening to him. But I mean, when they inject the serum into the guy to bring him back to life to kind of see what it does, and then
that's another time where I thought about turning off the movie.
I mean, yeah.
When he's like,
when he swings his head back and breaks, that
coming out on the top.
But I mean that epitomizes how juiced they are. That he's doing that and it's breaking his neck and ripping the top of his body apart, and it instills that they're superhuman.
Spoiler alert! By the way, we didn't ever say.
Well, they're what David they expect it now. Whatever. Spoiler alert! There,
they're zombies.
Yes. Were they zombies?
They still had their thinking ability, like the main German guy.
Yeah, but the other ones kind of didn't. So,
yeah, but did he use a different serum? Maybe he used a different serum,
he injected more of it.
Yeah, or versus being alive versus not being alive.
Yeah,
because they all kind of had different effects to it, and there could have been different versions of it.
Man, the first time I saw her aunt or whatever that was in the back bedroom.
Yes,
yeah,
that was another jump scare. I was like, holy smokes!
Yeah. Yeah.
You knew. I mean, you were prepared for it. I figured something like it was going to happen.
You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah,
we all knew that as soon as if they stayed on that door, you knew that she was just going to come out of nowhere. And I still pooed myself.
Yeah,
I still did it. It didn't matter. I knew it was coming, and I still did it.
And every time a jump scare happened, I turned the volume down about 6 or 8 dB. That's how I got to negative 41.
By the time Jonathan's at the end of the movie, subtitles are on because there's no volume.
The only thing that kind of caught me off guard in that one is I couldn't quite tell if it was a cult or pseudoscience until we got to the lab. And it was still kind of unclear a little bit ways through, because I kept talking about how like there was always this thing that was under the church that they hadn't been taking advantage of. So I don't know if it was some kind of thing that was under the church that they had been using it to develop the serum off of, or what. I didn't delve into the lore of the.
I appreciate that they didn't dive into it because you didn't have any plot holes.
Right,
you just kind of left it, and it was unknown.
There was that big pit of like black stuff.
Yeah, that was it.
He said it was tar. That he said in the thing, "This is tar," and who knew that we had left this potential untapped for so long, or something like that. They were,
but they didn't really explain what it was or anything. It was just there, and so sometimes directors and producers and writers, less is more.
You don't like midichlorians? Is that what you're saying?
No, I honestly wish they'd have gone hard in the midichlorians and finished the story the way that George Lucas had originally written that. I think the actual finishing of the Journal of the Wills would have been so much better than what we got.
Anything would have been better than what we got, Bob.
That's very true. But
anything would have been better. Like no movie would have been better than what we got. Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
So before we move on, what do we want the next movie to be? Jonathan, you've got to pick. I keep picking movies that you don't like. And by the time I keep picking
this one, it's just I lost 6 months off my life. That's
next time I'm going to pick a movie. We're going to turn Jonathan's stream on and all of his speakers are going to be off the walls. He's going to be like, I'm done with home theater. I'm out.
All for sale. I can't do it anymore.
Pick a movie. Give us something.
Did you say you had or hadn't watched Downfall?
No,
Have you
I
watched
know
it,
nothing
Paul?
about it.
It's fantastic. Let's do that one.
Is it a movie?
Oh, yeah.
How old is it?
10 years, maybe. I don't know exactly.
Downfall.
This is the 20-year-old war documentary.
You will have watched memes from this movie plenty on the internet. All the little Hitler memes where they have like Hitler decries Xbox Live banning his account, stuff like that.
Yes, okay.
Yes, that is the movie that all those come from.
Is this in German?
It is, and it's
Okay.
just like we're talking about. Like watch the subtitles. It has the dialogue. You don't need to watch it to understand it. It's fantastic. One of those that sticks with you for years.
It kind of goes along the same theme.
It's not. It's not. It's not like what we just watched.
You mean World War II was actually zombies?
No, it's not that.
Oh, hold on, I'm getting it.
But it's very good.
So Downfall, huh?
Yeah. It won all kinds of awards, and it should have.
Doesn't even tell me what. I guess it's probably 5.1. I just have it in HD. Was it ever done in 4K or is it just HD?
I think I just have the DVD, so I don't even know.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with watching DVDs. They actually turn out a lot better than you think they were going to when you put them back in.
Unless they're Dark Fury. What a terrible movie or whatever that was.
It was an episode of Aeon Flux.
That was not Aeon Flux. That was really bad.
Did you ever watch Aeon Flux?
Yes.
I think I watched it years ago, right?
It's the same. It was the same director and the same art style, and I didn't love it then, and I don't like it now.
The art style was fine. It was just the art style in combination with the complete lack of a plot.
Wow.
That made me feel like I was just wasting my time.
But I was surprised at how good like Chronicles of Riddick just looked on DVD. I mean, that held up really well.
Yeah. That was good. All right, I got Downfall, so that'll be next.
Good. I think you'll really like it.
You're not even going to watch it again with us?
I'll watch it again.
Okay.
That's a good one.
All right. So we'll watch that. On to the topic. The topic is...
One more thing before we go on. Whoever the main actor was in your Overlord movie, I thought he did an excellent job. Mm-hmm. And what other movies is he in? I did not recognize him.
Yes, Miles Downfall in 2004. That's the movie. It's not 10 years old, Jonathan. It's 20 years old.
20 years old. Time flies.
Yeah.
Guys, I am starring stuff that I've never seen.
I am starring your topic. So if you guys have questions and you're asking them, I am starring them, but we'll get to them a little bit later. All the actors were great in that movie, including the kid. The kid did an awesome job coming across as a kid.
Yes, both.
Yeah.
Yes, all. I agree.
Did he even have any dialogue? Not really. Maybe like 2 lines.
Yeah.
That's all he needed. He was on the screen quite a bit, but that was all he needed. That was good.
Well, he only spoke French too. And
yeah. All right. So, topic. Once you see, there is no unseeing. Whose idea was this? This was Bob's.
This was my
good idea.
This was Bob's idea. So, Bob, I'll let you start with this.
So I don't know if this is just chasing things down the rabbit hole or experiencing new things or broadening your horizons kind of aspect, but it can be a positive and negative thing. And it gets heavily biased upon, where you're at, who you're hanging around, and the situation you're in, whether or not you're having a positive situation regarding a piece of equipment or experience or just a way you're viewing your system or someone else's. It can really lead heavily on things that you may perceive differently at home or in another situation. Mm-hmm. I've had a couple of, I guess, really positive side ones recently that have, left me with, I guess, changed preconceptions that I had where, from bass to video where I'm like, I got enough bass. I don't really need to worry about it. I'd heard kind of overwhelming bass at a lot of other people's places. And it wasn't quite for me, but once I finally heard it really dialed in and just done in a way that came across well integrated and just not loud and boomy for the sake of being loud and boomy. I kind of got hooked on it. Motion was kind of the same thing. We had this experience with Ryan this week. After we get done watching Overlord, I'd been kind of watching the way motion worked, because one of the weaknesses that kind of everyone will admit about the JVCs is their motion interpolation is not great at all. It's better left off. At least in my opinion. I don't particularly like the way CMD works. But I've been watching the way that the Mad VR works in Ryan's room, and for most of the movie, I thought it did a very good job. There were a few times where I didn't like the way it was handling motion interpolation. And really, it was kind of the scene in the airplane where things got really chaotic. And then in the scene right after the trip mine where he was disoriented, I thought those didn't, it was just the way that motion was being enhanced. I didn't think added. I thought it kind of seemed a little bit artificial. Well, afterwards we got the 4K 120 working, and then it became really different, because that is not the same as the other algorithms that are on there, because there's no duplicated frames. The way the motion looks is
to be clear. To be clear about that particular algorithm, Envy has two 4K 120 algorithms. It has the native one, the normal one, and then it has another one, which is 4K 120, which is really only supposed to be run on the MK2, the Envy MK2. And even then, it has to disable some other algorithms in order to make it work. So the normal 4K 120 version does a combination of frame doubling and motion interpolation. This version does motion interpolation for every single frame. So you're going from 24 all the way to 120, and you're getting 4 extra frames that are motion interpolated instead of some doubled, some interpolated. And we even switched back and forth between the old one, not the old one, but the normal one, and the enhanced one. And once you go from enhanced to the normal one, you then can go back and see all the individual frames.
Yep.
And you can start to see judder again, which is interesting because it's 4K 120. You're like, how would you see that? And it's not hard. Once your eye sees, there's no unseeing. That's why I guess we brought up this topic, is once you see and you get adjusted to something, it's very hard to go back, because that becomes your new status quo.
It looks just staggeringly good. And I've got one that I'm trying out for a little bit. And the first time I hooked that up, it was like I was watching a completely different display. Like the system just didn't look the same. I had gotten complacent with bad motion. I had gotten to the point where I wasn't necessarily making sure that I was using the right source that delivered 24p. I'd be okay with 24p content delivered at 30 frames per second or at 60. So you've got some 3.2 pull down issues. You've got some obvious judder on the screen. And I'm just like, that's the way it looks. I got to turn it on, just, want to watch a movie, but it doesn't look right. And then once you've seen the way it can look, it's really hard to go back. It's like watching, it's almost like you're playing a game. Anyone who's gamed in the past, imagine gaming at a nice smooth frame rate, and all of a sudden your antivirus kicks on, and all of a sudden everything's just jumping around. That's what it almost seems like turning this thing off.
It's like gaming at 4K 120 and then trying to go back to 2 decades ago
frames
when
a
we were
second.
doing 4K or 1080p 30 or something like that. There is no going back. Even though back then we're like, oh my gosh, this looks so good. If we went back and look at that now, I don't even know that we'd be able to play it.
But it's not even that. The advantage to that one is because you're getting full frames all the way up to 120 with no interspersed frames or doubled frames. You don't get that kind of judder that you get out of just 60 hertz or, the 30 or 60 hertz versions of it. And I honestly, before that version, I would prefer the 24p version, just watching it at native frame rate. But this is really hard to unsee. It looks really good. I really like the way it puts an image on the screen, and just the clarity that you get is very different than anything else.
So what we're talking about, oops, sorry, is in this particular instance of once you see there is no unseeing, is Bob got exposed to true 4K 120 motion AI motion interpolation because we were able to get 4K 120 going on the Christie Griffin. I had not had it until a couple days ago. We were having issues with cables. We moved the NV right behind the sub in the MadVR Experience Center. So now it's connected via 10-foot passive cable. And then I'm running the active cable to the input side of NV. So we were able to get 4K 120 going. And it is, I had thought the image looked great on 4K 60, and this just blew that away. Like there's no comparison. Thank you, love.
So and while I was doing that, I was looking at some stream content. And when you get the stream content delivered, that's already been, that the frame rate's already been pushed up. So I was watching, I tried to watch Overlord on Fandango at home, or which I think that's what Voodoo is now. And it was not dropping my frame rate to 24p. So it was already coming across at 60. So when the MadVR was trying to do motion interpolation on that, it didn't come out looking as good as it did as if I played a 24p version and upscaled that.
You know, and I think that's a good point that I'd like all of our viewers to recognize is I want you guys to be cognizant of the frame rate that you're actually watching content. I don't think people pay enough attention to that and look at and realize that their source device may be modifying the content already without you even knowing.
I'm very guilty of that. And so, I had not done it until, or not been cognizant of it till then.
In Bob's case, and in really most people's cases, say an Apple TV, for example, in most cases with an Apple TV, if you plug that in, what it's going to do is it's going to go to 4K HDR 60, and then it's not going to change the range or the frame rate. So if a content is SDR, it's going to upscale it to HDR. And if the content is 24 or 30 or 48 or 50, it's just going to shove it into a 60p container. And it's going to do a bunch of different types of pull down depending on the frame rate in order to make that happen. And it can end up looking like a mess. However, if you're ignorant to this, and this is the other side of this, and I've told people this before, and I do not mean this negatively, even though it's going to come across potentially negatively, is that ignorance can be cheap. And what I mean by that is if you don't know, you don't know what you're missing. So you're not chasing this thing because you don't know that that thing exists. And that can be very freeing in and of itself. So there's two sides to this, right? There's the, I know, and I will never be able to go back, which in a lot of people's cases ends up making things, the rabbit hole, both deeper and potentially more expensive. And then the other side is, I don't know, I'm ignorant to it, I'm enjoying what I have, so what do I care?
I would say that while the Envy did an amazing job, and that's something that's really going to be hard to unsee, my biggest takeaway from that is I need to be extremely cognizant on what source streaming platform and device I'm using to make sure I'm getting native frame rate out of it, because that made a huge difference too.
Like as another example with the Apple TV, do people know that if you're watching, just as an example, YouTube TV, and you have, I can't remember what the audio mode is on the Apple TV, but if it is, I want to say if it's Atmos, or maybe if it's anything above stereo, it will down mix or downscale your frame rate in YouTube TV to 24p. Even if it's broadcast television. So like sports will look horrific.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure maybe they fixed that, but that used to be a pretty serious problem. I have a feeling they didn't fix it.
And I want to start going through all the streaming services and the devices I have and find out kind of which ones work best on which, and just be more cognizant at that point. It's for me in the past has been which one puts out Atmos, which one puts out the best audio signal, and call it good, and just have accepted the fact that the video just might not look right. And I don't think I really want to make that compromise anymore when there are better ways to do it without without even diving down the rabbit hole of exterior video processing.
Jonathan, this question's for you, and it pertains to our topic. How is frame interpolation on the Epson LS12000?
This is a subjective response because that's all I can give, but it's the best I've seen. To me personally, it's the best I've seen, besides the QB1000,
Right,
which is the evolution of the LS12000's frame, and it's a little bit smoother even yet on the QB1000. So I've been sensitive to that for quite a while, Bob, where like I have everything match native source because it's kind of like what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Like once you've seen the difference, you don't want to go back. And I don't know if some people can't see it or they just haven't been exposed to it. I don't know the answer to that. But when I've tried, and I've tried it several times because I don't like that 5 to 7 second blank out that I have on the Epson when it switches between the source content, HDR to SDR. If there's an ad that comes up and you're watching an HDR thing, the ad's an SDR. Now you got to wait 5 to 7 seconds for a picture. I don't like that, but I'm willing to tolerate that because I think the quality of the product of the content you're trying to watch is so much better for doing it. So it's kind of like this love-hate thing. I tolerate the 5 to 7 second timeouts between every YouTube clip, between commercials, between different sources, switch, all that stuff, because I can see that 3.2 pull down judder. I'm very sensitive to motion. I can see things that I don't like. Color spaces when you make SDR go to HDR is never exactly right. Sometimes I feel the same way when I make HDR go to SDR. Like both ways with that conversion that happens with my appliances, it doesn't seem perfect. So I usually like to match the source and not do anything. That's an easy setting on most devices. On the Apple TV, for sure, it's just one dialog box. You change 2 settings in there to say match source content and match source frame rate, color and frame rate.
And I can't really get the Xbox to do that for most things, but I can get the Fire Stick to do it. I mean, that does match frame rate for most apps, but not all.
I also think the frame interpolation, some people say the frame interpolation on the product is good enough to use 60 hertz and then let whatever come, but that's not been my experience on anything.
I don't think that source devices are doing frame interpolation.
I think it might be the way they're encoded in the actual streaming product.
I think
I'm saying on the display device, like if you turn on frame interpolation, they're saying like then it doesn't matter because your frame interpolation covers it, but I haven't seen that to be the case.
A lot of frame interpolation products are less than desirable.
Mm-hmm.
Most are. I don't even like most of them, in my opinion.
There's very few that I would put in a sense that are good. And I think they're a necessary evil. Once you understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and you get used to them. So let's talk about frame interpolation, because I think that's kind of, we've talked about this before, but I want to make sure everybody understands. And before we get there, Jonathan mentioned black screens, 5 to 7 second black screens. For anybody that doesn't know, the black screens are brought up because of HDMI negotiations. Anytime there is a change in whatever needs to be played, whether that be bit depth, chroma, frame rate, range, any of that stuff, anytime any of that changes, HDMI has to go through another negotiation to say, hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing this, so that everybody on the signal chain is doing the same thing, so that the image comes through as it properly should. When that takes place, depending on the devices and their ability to do this and how fast they can do it, black screens are introduced. And you guys both know that historically with some devices, and I'm going to pick on JVC just because this is the one we all know to be really bad. Old Sonys.
Old JVCs,
Old JVCs, yes. Old Sonys were really bad with this too. They would take forever
10,
in order to
15
change.
seconds, yeah.
Even
sometimes longer.
Yeah, I bought a JVC RS 540 and it would sometimes, and before that I borrowed a JVC RS 500. It would sometimes take longer than the 20 or 30 seconds Windows gives you to click the OK button before it would appear. Like you would change resolution and you'd never see it pop up to click OK ever.
Oh, man. Yeah. So
and
sometimes
that wasn't just changing the resolution. That was when you're watching content and it's taking 20-second timeouts or 30-second timeouts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes they can take a really, really long time. I'm just starring a couple questions here real quick. So about motion interpolation, frame interpolation, all that stuff. People, the reason that exists in my mind, and I could be wrong, I'm not the guy in the industry. I'm not an inventor. I've just been around this for a long time. To me, the reason this exists is because we romanticize about film projection. We romanticize about these very smooth video processes or renderings or displays. You got film, you got CRT, plasma. They were all stupid smooth with how they handled motion. And now we're getting into LED, LCD, OLED. DLP's better than those, but it's not still not going back to CRT or plasma. And you get into this sample and hold effect, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one page, or frame, nothing in between them. Well, film, CRT, plasma, they all have a fade out, fade in, fade out, fade in, fade out. So there's a transitionary period. Well, why is the transitionary period important? It's important because of how our vision works. We have what's called persistence of vision. So if you all, I'm just imagining everybody looking around the room as I explain this. If you look at something and then look at something else, your mind holds on to what you looked at previously for just a moment. Just a moment. And if you look at that with frame rates, if I see one thing and then another frame comes up and I hold that previous one for a moment and then it moves, my brain goes and smears it. And you get cinematic effect. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's subjective. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But to me, motion interpolation and black frame insertion tries to get around that and get us back to closer to what the smoothness of these different displays allowed us to be. Plus, we're getting into gaming and some of us like the smoothness. I like the smoothness, regardless of what the previous generations looked like. I like the butter smoothness. I've gamed long enough. That is what my brain expects.
Oh, yeah. Well, we also had that issue with the early LED TVs on how quickly they could change pixels.
Yeah.
So you had to smooth the image. Otherwise, you're going to get ghost. You had to create blank frames, or you had to create halfway frames in between them to transition the image. Otherwise, you're going to get ghosting.
Yeah. And now, whenever I look at 24p content, I just see this every single frame. And my brain's adjusted to it. There is no unseeing it now. I have adjusted. There is no going back.
I would rather watch 24p than 3.2 pull down 60 or 30.
Well, yes, but I'd rather watch neither.
I would rather watch neither now that I've...
don't want to watch either of them.
I have kind of an interesting observation on this topic. 2017 timeframe, I went from AMD video cards to NVIDIA, but I had AMD FreeSync displays.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went to NVIDIA, I lost my FreeSync. And I FreeSync and G-Sync and VRR to a gamer, to my eyes, is like the best thing that's been invented since
so good
3DFX. Like it's something I can tremendously see, and this is another subjective vision thing. Like I've done tests with different people. Some people say they see it, and some people say they don't, and some people really see it, and some people just don't care. I really see it. So to me, that's such a huge upgrade. When I went to the NVIDIA card, I went from Fury X to 1080 Ti. So a pretty nice jump in performance to the 1080 Ti. Like it was a significant boon. I hated the experience so much. I bought them right before a LAN party, so I'd have like a nicer video card for the LAN party. I had a bunch of people over here, like 30 people over here, maybe 25 people over here. We were playing games. It ruined the LAN party for me because now I went from having this nice FreeSync where FreeSync gives you that like super smooth. There's no matter what the frame rate is, it just keeps consistently smooth. As long as it's above about 40 frames per second, it looks smooth. I went to a 1080 Ti, which lost the FreeSync because my monitors were FreeSync, and I didn't have a G-Sync monitor. And now everything looked choppy. Even though I'm getting higher frame rates, I'm getting like 60, 70, whatever frame rates instead of like less. It looked choppy. And I remember thinking like nobody else cared. Nobody else even knew about it. I just remember thinking like I'm sitting here playing these games I like. I love LAN parties. We do them like once a year. I couldn't even enjoy myself. I was like, this looks so terrible to me compared to what I've been used to these last 2 years. I should never have sold those, cards. Well, then that just made me buy a G-Sync monitor. Instead,
darn.
Darn. That was the outcome from that. But it really ruined the weekend for me. So yes, the first world problems to be sure. But
all of this is.
But it was a clear difference to my eyes to where it like changed my whole mood about this event that I prize, that I love doing, so that.
So let's answer a couple questions about the Envy because I think and video motion interpolation because before we move on to another part of this. If I don't answer your question, we will come back to it. I'm just trying to get some stuff that are pertinent on the topic. MW asks, Ryan, did you upgrade the Christie to HDMI 2.1 to get the 120 4K? No, the Griffin that is in the Mad VR Experience Center actually came with it. It was introduced last year with all of the new models. However, the 4K 120 is behind a license paywall. You have to get Mirage. It does not come with access to it. I don't know why. I have not asked why. Historically, this input is supposed to be used for how they're doing 3D. You can do with Mirage Pro like up to 480 hertz per eye for 3D at 2K. It's supposed to be insane, but we haven't opened that can of worms yet, and I don't know that I want to, because I don't know that I want to. I want to stay ignorant on that front. That can be a whole nother rabbit hole I don't know that I want to go down. So it's on the new Christie's, M4Ks, Griffins, Eclipses, but it's behind a license paywall. So yes and no. JTB asked, did I make a mistake ordering a refurbished LS 11,000 from Epson store, getting nervous about a used laser? Jonathan, you're our resident Epson guy.
I think you made a mistake buying the LS 11,000, not necessarily refurbished, but maybe the model number. And I say that because of this. Epson has an ultra black series and a non-ultra black series. And the difference in contrast is like 2,000 to 1 native versus 5,000 to 1 native. And the LS 11,000 is not the UB panels, the ultra black panels. It's like the equivalent of an Epson 3800 or an Epson 4150, or kind of like the lesser model Epsons. And the LS 12,000 has the ultra black designation. So that's more like the 5050 or the 5030, the 5040, those types of things. So the black level is significantly different between the LS 11,000 and LS 12,000. If you're in a bright living room environment, or if you're someplace where you don't have like a black room, like light control, LS 11,000 is fine. You'll probably never notice the difference. If you have light control in a dark room, you're going to notice the difference between 2001 and 5001. And I think it's worth the extra money to get the LS 12,000.
Yep, absolutely.
As far as refurb, Epson has a really good refurb policy. So if you're patient and have the gumption to deal with it, they'll just overnight you a new one if you're not happy with your refurb. So that's not a problem. But they have a notoriously bad refurb pool. Like, notoriously.
It's not just Epson, though.
They just sometimes send out like models that have problems again. So you're trading one model with problem for another model with a problem. It's not like they're giving you something that's perfect. For instance, I had a problem with my last Epson projector, the 5040, and it took me, I think, 5 or 6. I'd have to go back and look at the thread. 5 or 6 exchanges to get one that was perfect, and that was only because I complained willy nilly. Like, just I called corporate multiple times. I had a ticket open. I documented all the problems. I put it on the forums, and I said, look, you guys keep sending me crap projectors. They have dust spots. They have tint miscoloration. Like, somebody else sent this back because I had a problem, and you guys didn't fix it, and you just sent it out again, obviously. So finally, I got to the point where I talked to management, and they said, look, we'll get our guys to give you a good one here. We see your saga. We don't want this press. We'll make it go away type thing.
And again, to be clear, this is not limited to just Epson. I think all of them have this problem. And to also be clear, the manufacturers in a lot of these cases do not repair their own projectors.
It's real pathetic. I mean, I haven't had a refurb experience with other ones because my Panasonics always just worked. But on my Epsons twice now, 2 different Epsons, the Epson 8350 and the Epson 5040, my refurb experience was not good.
The refurb experience that I've had with the LS 12,000s has been pretty good.
That's good.
For the ones that I've had to replace for customers, they've been very quick, and they're
always quick. They'll overnight you a new one, or at least they did when I had my 5040. They literally would overnight it. Like you wouldn't even have to ship yours back. They'd just say, all right, almost for anything. Like, you just tell them, like, hey, I got a pixel that's stuck, or I got a discoloration. All right, we'll send you a new one. Overnight it. Yep. It's there the next day. FedEx 2 days sometimes.
Yep.
Then you send the old one in. If you don't send it in within 2 weeks, they bill you. But the problem is, in my experience, twice, the 8350 had to go through like 4 models. It's just a crappy pool.
There was another manufacturer that will remain unnamed that I went through 4.
I hope they fix that
and
stuff.
we're now on our 5th one. So we'll see if that gets fixed. It is not limited to Epson, so don't think badly about just them. It is not just them. It is all of them. Projectors are very complex pieces, and they get shipped, and they get banged around, and they are like cameras. We use them all the time. They heat up, they cool down. Things are going to happen. Key is you just have to have a manufacturer that's going to get you taken care of and get it fixed and make it right. Epson seems to eventually.
Yeah, you just got to make noise if you're having trouble. But as far as refurbished, if you will have the patience to pursue it, like I said, they'll take care of you. It'll just take a while to get through it. I would pursue that LS 12,000 though, if you still have the opportunity to exchange that or to trade out your purchase.
I would agree. Anthony says, I wish I was live for the frame rate talk because I have a lot to say. We're still talking about it. And we're probably going to be talking about projectors for a little bit because I know there was a topic that Jonathan brought up. And this will segue into kind of us talking about the forums and seeing and unseeing and biases and stuff like that. So if you got something to say, absolutely bring it up. I want to see it in chat. Now I'm going to call you out. You better say something, Anthony. Better happen. Was there anything else about projectors? MW asked me something. So that's 4K 120 444 12-bit. Yes, it is. I checked the Envy's output and it is 4K 120 444 12-bit. So it's effectively as good as I'm going to get. And it looks marvelous. Can't wait to play with it a little bit more. Today was measurement day. I was playing with a mic array. So that was fun. But nobody.
You got that working?
Mm-hmm. I'll send you the measurements. It turned out good. And then yesterday I was messing with, I guess I can show this while we're on this topic. I was messing with photos. Wow. I was messing with this and I made this. Jonathan's seen that. You guys have seen that. Mm-hmm. But I made an x-ray wall because when we took the screen down to make some changes, I took some pictures and then we put this up so that it looks like you're looking through the screen.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It turned out really good. I like it. I think it's just cool because I talk about, oh, this is back there, and now you can kind of see it. And this is a better picture, so you can see actually this is in color of how things look. So turned out good. That was what I was working on yesterday. So segue into while we were talking about the LS 12,000 and RMA stuff. Jonathan, you brought up today the posts on the forums, and this isn't bad. It's just, I think, a segue kind of into this and how biases can creep in, and you can then get a preconceived notion about how something's going to be, and then you're looking for something, and you're no longer ignorant to whatever that is, and it may or may not bother you. So
I thought that this was actually kind of in the original topic that Bob had come up with, where like once you see something, you can't unsee it. And where you can make, frankly, in my opinion, you can make kind of a mountain out of a molehill and something that like it just kind of like iterates in your mind and becomes worse and worse of a problem. Very specifically, I'm talking about there's a cyan color bug in HDR 2020 on the Epson LS 12,000 and the subsequent models, the LS, the QB 1000, QB 3000, 7000, etc. Where in certain gradients with BT 2020, there's kind of a cyan color shift that shouldn't be there. But it's, in my opinion, and you'll have different opinions on this, it's been there since launch. It took almost a year for it to even surface, for someone to like bring it up on the forum. And then since then, they brought it to Epson's attention. Epson has said, hey, we can't fix this. This is a hardware issue. It's not a software issue. It's nothing we can fix. If you want it fixed, you send your projector in and you get a new chip or whatever to fix it. The problem is so slight that, to my knowledge, I've read almost every post in the owner's thread. To my knowledge, nobody has even taken him up on it except for the original owner who found the issue or documented the issue. Yet, it's like one of the guys that was, even the original owner, he's like, I thought I saw something weird for about the first year, and then I finally dove into it because I decided to like really dig into it and figure out what it is. Since then, I read posts like saying, well, that cyan bug would keep me from buying the Epson because I don't want to deal with that.
And I am not discrediting his findings. That is not what I'm
the findings are real. I mean,
they are real.
So if I go look at the content, I will see it. But the times I've seen that has when I go to specific timestamps that somebody pointed out and said, watch this at this timestamp and you'll see it. Or watch this test pattern is the one that they typically will do to say, see if you see it here.
So you're saying
you will see it.
You're saying that you saw that the post was originally about the QB 1000.
No, it's been in the LS 12,000 thread. They were curious if it's extended into the QB 1000, and it does.
And so, but you've been really happy with your 12,000. Is this something you just never noticed, or
it's so? In my subjective opinion, it's so slight as to not be a bother. Like in the scheme of flaws on a display,
right?
Very minor. But the people who are bothered by it are bothered by it. And I think it's something that they like that whole once you see, you can't unsee. It's a different kind of.
Now you're just making so many more people see it.
JVC bright corners are the same thing. People get obsessed with them. And for most content, I mean, I don't see them. You see them once or twice a movie and they're there and you kind of accept that they're there. If you want to focus on them and just get obsessed with them,
I had that
it's going to ruin your experience.
But I think this is even less than that, though.
I think this is a lot less than that. Like, I've probably seen this 3 times in 3 years on the
If you don't know that this is there, you would never know. If you have no reference material to sit next, this is like when we were talking about the LS12000 against the QB1000. They are so close. The QB1000 is technically better, and its specs, like its specs are real. It's not exaggerated. You just need more of it to be like an in-your-face, punch you in the face. This is double what it is.
I thought the only difference between those two that was noticeable was the motion, and that was noticeably better.
The QB1000 is better than the LS12000, no question. But the reason I brought that up is because unless you had those two right next to each other,
it'd be very hard to tell.
If I sent you out of the room and you came back in, you'd have no idea what you were watching. So my point with the cyan shift is, if you don't know how something should look, if you don't know that that image doesn't have a slight cyan shift, you would never know.
Most people. I mean, there's obviously some people that say it because they're discovered it, but it's such a slight thing. Like,
but that's the kind of thing that shows up when you're watching the same content on multiple different displays, and you start looking at the differences between them. If you just have one display that you watch all your content on, you're probably not going to see that. But if you have a calibrated OLED TV or a high-end TV in one room, and then you go watch the same movie on the other one, wait, that didn't look the same. Or you look for something that just doesn't look quite right. That's where those pop up.
Fully agree. Or if you're looking like the gradients, I was kind of like, this doesn't really matter. I'm having a hard time seeing what he's talking about. And then he brought up the gradients, and the gradients made it super easy. But the gradients should de facto be this color. They're one color in one way, and they're a different color in the other one. And you could plainly see it. But in normal content,
you don't watch gradients.
Yeah, I don't. You don't watch. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Now, again, I am not discrediting what he did. I think there is a problem, and it should be fixed. Our point with this, though, is if you didn't know this was a problem, and now we're ruining it for a bunch of people. But if you didn't know that this was a problem, I don't know that you'd ever know. I don't think you would ever know.
I don't think most people would. I mean, like I say, I've had this thing for 3 years. I've had a lot of people through my theater. My family's watched it. Like, a lot of people are super critical. I mean, nobody's ever said boo about it. So it's not, I just don't think it's something you run across in like daily normal use. And Mike Garrett, it was one of the guys on the forum that's, a salesman for AV Science Sales. He one time said, look, if you're looking for a problem in any display product, any projector, you're going to find it. None of them are perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And that's truth. I mean, that's just truth.
Boondoggle says, I assume I won't see this on my LS12000 since I'm using a Lumigen in 709 color mode.
It's not affected in SDR.
It's not affecting in 709. It's BT 2020 only.
Yeah.
So you won't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it's so the very topic comes to mind because some of those guys are like, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you'll see it a lot more. Sort of like maybe the theory, like when you buy a car, all of a sudden you see that kind of car all the time when you didn't even notice that car on the roads before.
But it's not that
they're warning, like, don't look at a bunch of test patterns that have this, because then it will train your eye to look for it and it'll bother you on everything.
Exactly. You're looking for the issue. Like when I was playing around with the Envy this week, I was trying to figure out what the difference was between some of the models that they use for the AI motion, and they all look really good. And I was trying to find what makes them different. And so you go through and you try to find content where you can see something wrong. And you have to really go out of your way to find something wrong to compare some of the differences between some of these things, or an issue. Like the scene that I wound up having, I watched the car scene from Ready Player One just dozens of times in a row, like going back 10 seconds, repeating the same clip, switching modes, trying to find differences. And they were really close. The one that really blew up the most for me was when at the end of Lucy, when she pops out on the white cliffs and does that rotating pan. Because you have a moving background and a more stationary, like a foreground,
you have a reference.
And you can see a bunch of artifacts. Like that is the one that really shows off the most, around like inner hair, because the hair is trying to interpolate the foreground hair and the background moving behind it, and like around her body. You've got to look for it, and you just don't see this in normal watching. I watched that the first time, just watched the end of the movie. I'm like, this looks amazing, and then I went back and tried to find a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But once you try to find that problem, you start fixating on it.
Mm-hmm. And then like we just talked about, it ramps up in your mind until you can't even like think about anything else. Like You mentioned black corners on JVC. That's something that escalated in my mind way beyond what it needed to. Just because, every time I saw them, it annoyed me one step further, and it got to the point where I was getting agitated with any time a dark scene would show up. It's not the majority of content, like you said. It might be once or twice a movie.
Yep.
But it was in my head, like, you know.
Yep. Now there's that white corner again. What am I going to do about this thing? This thing's terrible. Why does this keep happening?
Yeah.
Well, but I didn't see it for the other, 2 hours and 56 minutes of the movie, or 2 hours and 5 minutes of the movie. It was there for 3 seconds total.
Yep. I agree. This is I really appreciate what Amir does on Audio Science Review, but this is the same kind of stuff that people chase over there, right? Your fear of missing out because this is not the top Synad score. When you're not going to notice. You will not notice the difference. We are not machines. We are dumb. We cannot process all of this. This is exactly why when we say you need to do a blind A/B comparison and you must have fast audio switching, we can't remember stuff. You have to provide yourself a reference. If you do not have a reference, your brain will make one up.
Yep.
And it will be your subjective bias.
You read about that issue. So someone found this issue. Well, it's got to exist. So I've got to see this issue.
It's all over the forums.
And you hear it. You hear an issue. You see it posted somewhere. Someone saw this thing. Someone has this issue. Well, this must be a thing that I need to go see too. And I need to make sure my system has this issue or doesn't have this issue. And
or the more common one is this product has this issue, and then somebody's going to avoid it because they think it's going to be the worst thing known to man.
Yes.
That happens far more than anything else.
They've all got their little quirks, and it's just, finding the one that works best for your situation.
Yep. Jonathan, you've been battling this one, native contrast. You've had to come up against that, against ANSI contrast and brightness for a long time. Like, the LS12000's not a JVC. It doesn't have the native contrast. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have that. And then people write off a particular piece of hardware because it doesn't have a specific number on a spec sheet. But they don't realize that historically it's not as good in another realm, in multiple realms, when you consider motion, ANSI, things like that. So they just write things off because it doesn't meet some level of criteria.
Yep.
And so they see that, and there's no unseeing it. So then they just apply that to everything. So not only can what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, get you into trouble with getting into a demo and establishing a new status quo, it also gets you in the way of making objective fundamental decisions.
I had that same issue with native contrast with Overlord this week, because I watched it at Ryan's on the Christie the first time, and then I came back home and watched it. And I'm like, and it's probably not one of the movies that's going to show that highlights the Christie strength right now, because they don't have laser dimming yet. So it is a very dark.
We even talked about that. The whole first half of the movie is not a showcase for Christie.
No. And it just looked amazing on the JVC. But I can't get the big 160-inch full immersion. And that the big screen honestly has so much more of an immersion factor than the better picture on the smaller screen.
But I really forget all of that. When you were in the moment, did it matter?
No, it looked great. I liked it, and the sound was so on point that's what really drove that movie. But you go watch that on a different display in a different setting, and I had the exact opposite experience when I was at home. I was like, man, this looks amazing. This is incredible. I'm like, this sound is really anemic. Like, where's all like the explosions? Where's everything else? So I got to watch it on both like ends of the spectrum, where one was stunning visually, but I sat on the ottoman and moved it closer to the screen because I wanted a bigger picture.
Now I'm just imagining you in your theater with your phone like this.
I did that last night. Like when I was trying to chase down to look at different motion things, like I was far enough back that I couldn't see like enough to tell the difference. So I'm trying to see what the difference is. I put my ottoman like 6 feet away from the screen, and I'm just sitting there staring at it, trying to look for problems because there's so few.
Some people are complaining about crackling. Can you guys that have the crackling, can you try and disconnect from the stream and then come back, or force reload? Do like a Control-Shift-R and see if that fixes it for you. I don't hear any crackling on any of our audio streams.
I don't hear any crackling either.
So I think it must be the encoding. So try and restart that and see if it fixes it for you.
He's listening to it on his phone too. That can be
it's been multiple people that have come in that have said that. It's not just him. So that's why I brought that up. Otherwise, I'd say, well, personal problems.
I'll see if I hear it.
Oh, he's doing investigation. Now he's going to hear it and never unhear it. He's going to forever hear it on every stream in the future. Every stream in the future. So on the seeing, never unseeing, hearing, never unhearing, what side of the spectrum do you guys want to be on? Do you want to know how good things can be, or do you want to live in a little bit of ignorance? It's only when I talk. It's probably because I'm hitting a limiter and crackling.
When my theater was set up the way it was before, before I started playing with stuff, it was a go down, turn it on, enjoy it experience. The processor doesn't have the features to allow me to monkey with it. It just kind of does what it does. It does a great job. I got complacent in the motion. And I never once found like the experience lacking. I loved what I had. I really liked it, but it's not one of those things where you want to, you get complacent. And that's not a bad thing. You can really enjoy what you have, and everyone should really enjoy the system they have. You don't need to sit down and go, what can I do to change this? How do I make this better? But if you want to go down there and you want to find out other ways, visiting other people's rooms is a great way to do it, to see the way other people put things in process versus how you do it. Even with similar equipment, you might find that someone did a different, implemented it a different way that you have not. And that's a really neat thing to experience. And then we get really caught up in, there's something to be said about simplicity in activation of a system. Like, I have not been listening to Atmos music as much right now as I had in the past, because on the Lindorf, I could just cast it right off my phone. I could pick up my phone, I could click an album, I could click play. Without having a dedicated player like that, now I've got to turn on the projector, I've got to open an app, I've got to go through a different interface. And it's not because it's less convenient, it's less, I don't want to say less enjoyable, but I do it less often because it's just not as easy to get to. I think that's the same thing a lot of people run into with spouses or significant others using their systems when they're overly complex, because I don't want to go down and try to turn that thing on or push all the remotes or use everything else. I'm just going to go watch it on my phone.
Jonathan, do you hear any crackling?
I don't hear any crackling from Bob, and we just got a comment that someone said that Bob's crackling. So I don't know what's going on.
I think it must be the video encoding. Am I crackling?
You're not crackling either.
Okay. Well, I think it's just a case of once you hear, there's no unhearing. Now they didn't hear the crackle. They were always there. Nobody knew.
It's really relevant for the topic tonight.
It is. Sorry about the crackles, guys. I never like any of that to happen. We are always seeking perfection, though we will never get there. And I am a walking imperfection. I'm a walking light.
Turn your gain down one notch, because every once in a while I hear you hit the limiter. It makes like a little psh sound.
I did turn it down.
Turn it down again. We'll use the restream to auto level you.
Is that better?
Well, I don't know yet. You'll have to keep talking.
I'll keep talking. Okay. I'll have to mess with a compressor after this and see if I can get my stuff to not be.
I haven't heard crackling with you. I just heard a psh sound, like when they hit your limiter. And I'm watching the dialogue levels on the.
I turned my gain down. My gain was up quite a bit when we were having all those audio issues a long time ago, and now I think we've gotten a lot of them rectified. So now it's just trying to get things dialed in. Jonathan, Bob gave his perspective on where he exists on the knowing versus not knowing in the grand scheme of things. Where do you like to be as far as knowing what's possible versus living in a little bit of ignorance? I mean, we all, I think, like to live in a little place of ignorance, because not knowing allows us to be, if we're ignorant, happy with what we have. I'm that way. Bob's that way, I think, because then you end up chasing rabbits. And sometimes when you're constantly chasing, you don't get any opportunity to enjoy what's in front of you. So where do you exist with that?
I'm going to relay a little like parable that one of my professors taught me in college. He said, if I told you that you could have all the food you wanted, unlimited rest, as much exercise as you wanted, and sex that lasted a whole hour and felt as good as you can imagine, but you were a pig, would you take that trade? Basically, happy as anything can be, but without knowledge. And that was a philosophy class. And everybody kind of realized, like, no, I wouldn't trade my knowledge for satisfaction in all other areas. I value my knowledge. That's me. I value knowledge. Even if I have to make the conscious decision that I'm not going to let this bother me, and to varying degrees of success, I'd rather have the knowledge.
So that was Jonathan's feeling the entire time he was watching Overlord. I gotta get through it. I gotta know what it's like. I'm suffering, but I gotta get through it. Volume down. Yeah, that's how I feel. Doesn't matter where it takes me. I gotta know. Even if it makes me unhappy, I have to know. Because
and then at some point
know,
you can make some decisions based on it. And sometimes you just have to turn it off as best you can.
Yeah.
Like, turn off the little voice in the back of your head that says this isn't perfect.
I feel like I'm more unhappy not knowing than I am knowing and being unhappy. Not that I'm unhappy, but knowing that there may be a shortcoming or something like that, or an issue. I'd rather know and deal with it.
So when we were at Expona last year, and I was wandering around, I overheard a conversation between two people talking about the amount of equipment that they'd had through their system over the years, and the amount of time they'd spent trying to dial everything in. And it was one person kind of telling the other one about how he eventually kind of got past that stuff, and he realized that, like, in the last year he'd actually listened to more music than he had in like the 40 years he'd been doing the hobby.
Yeah, there's truth to that too.
And you just got more
put it
enjoyment
all aside and just
right.
enjoy what you have. Like, stop the pursuit.
But at some point, if you're just I feel like some people pursue just to pursue.
Yep.
Like, they're just throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded, and where it hits, that's where they go. There has to be some level of direction and reasoning behind things based on objectivity. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels and going in circles.
And a lot of that becomes because there's not a lot of objective blind comparisons. Everyone thinks that there's going to get something better. They've heard there's something better. It's got to be better because they're selling this or because it's more expensive. Until you actually sit down and kind of break through those walls on, is there an actual difference? Can I really tell this difference? It's hard to get your mind in that place.
Well, and then what level or what part of the information is pertinent and matters? And how much of that percentage, how much of that is...
Well, the toughest part is being in an environment where you're ever going to hear it, or even see it. I mean, other than M-Wave, the last couple of years, where are you going to go to a show or a dealer room or a vendor where they're going to show you a bunch of things at various prices and try to show you how similar they are?
It's not common. That's why it was neat. Yep.
I'm a really bad salesman, aren't I?
Yes. I mean,
not how you're supposed to do things.
Here's this crazy expensive thing, and you know what? Maybe it's a little bit better, but honestly, this thing's almost just as good, and it cost a tenth.
Here's $6,000 audio cables, but the coat hanger works just as well.
Want the $6,000 audio cables? They're for sale.
Yeah, they are. They're on my floor. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to admit that they're mine.
Oh no.
And you know what? They've been on my floor since M-Wave, and I'm still using a piece of I don't know whether this is monoprice or something else speaker cable. I haven't even hooked them back up.
The journey Bob has been on.
That's been neat.
It is super cool. So yeah, evidently I'm a really bad salesman, but I think it's really important for people to know the objective side of things. I mean, for so long, people exist in this world of subjectivity, never really knowing, thinking they know, in a world of adjectives, because that's a big part of what this hobby has been surrounded by, is adjectives that really nobody could define. And there's not a lot of data, and nobody uses the data. And the people that want to sell don't want to point you to the data because it directly goes against everything that they're potentially trying to tell you. So I just encourage and want people to gain the knowledge so that they can make better foundational decisions that lead them in a more positive direction. Because I think if you base your decisions on knowledge, at the end of the day, if you know that you made that decision while knowing, even if you know you may not have made it all the way, I think it's a much more freeing feeling than not knowing at all.
I like how we have all these meaningful thoughts in the comments. Like people are really diving into this, and then we got this poor fella who says, "I can't focus because traffic."
Once
You cannot hear it.
there
So
is no unhearing. There's no going back. What was the moment for you guys? What was the defining? I have seen, now there is no unseeing. I've heard, now there is no unhearing. Let's do a video and an audio one. What is that moment? Do you guys have a moment for that
I
you
do.
remember?
I do.
Go ahead.
First time I heard pro audio speakers coming from like all kinds of different home audio speakers all those years. Maybe it was 2000, 2012, 2013, 2014, in that time frame. Blew my mind in a home theater cinema when I could hear, and I've talked about this before on our show, watching things like the giant foot stop down on War of the Worlds, where that, and the glass shattered from the car, and it was so loud it was like you were there, or the chains clinking down the well in the Lord of the Rings, where when I'm listening to my audiophile speakers, you hear the chains go down, you're like, so what, big deal, that woke up the whole world. You listen to pro audio and those chains are clinking loud. It's not the little tweeter giving out 85 dB, it's now 105 dB if you got it up at reference. It's loud. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, okay, now I see, like, this totally changed things. So that was the audio side. It's the pro audio things for me. And subwoofers too. I could go into a long story there, but you guys probably know some of those.
Yeah, but chat doesn't.
Okay, well, my first experience with subwoofers was probably going over, like, a super high-end experience was going over and hearing, let me back up a little bit. Maybe not super high end, but for that time frame in my life, super high end. Okay, right? So HSU VTF 15H. The first time I heard a subwoofer that can dig to 16 hertz with authority in a small room.
How long ago was that?
This was 2011.
So that was a big deal in 2011. We were just starting to get bigger and bigger subwoofers. You didn't have what you have now.
No,
necessarily then.
No, and it was a small room, like very small room, and he had one of those things and later two of those things. And I remember going over there. We watched The Incredible Hulk, which has a lot of like stomping around at that frequencies at the end fight between him and the Abomination.
Mm-hmm.
There were like thuds happening, fist thuds and stuff that were happening that were like shaking my pant legs. We're in a very small room, like only can fit like 3 people in there. And that sub was just lighting that room up. It was so impressive. I remember driving home and like calling all my friends, anyone that would answer the phone, like, you've got to hear this subwoofer. It's amazing. I didn't know subs could do this, And like, I had 4 15s in my own home at the time. They were sealed. They were car audio subs. They probably didn't even do hardly anything under 30 hertz because I didn't use DSP. I just didn't know all these things, right? I was still pretty fresh. So my subs didn't do that. I didn't get anything in 16 hertz when I watched The Incredible Hulk, even the 415s. And I just thought that HSU was fire. And so like, then we ended up eventually putting it in my room, which was a big room, and it didn't do the same thing because I had a lot more airspace and all these things you learn over the course of time. But that just fired me up on the subwoofer side. And for the audio side, there's been things that have done audio like 3DFX, bringing 3D to the world, VSync, G-Sync, VRR, bringing smoothness to the world. But OLED is what I'd probably hand the ticket to, with just the perfect blacks. And we've talked about that so many podcasts, I'm not going to reiterate, but just, my gosh, what a good picture. Like, since I got this OLED, I know I'm on a C2. Now there's C3, there's C4, there's the G series, there's Samsung's QD OLED. All those things would be better than my C2. To me, my C2 is so good. Like, I don't even watch the new models. It's just so good already. Like, it's a better mousetrap.
Well, I think it comes in stages. You get to a certain point, and then you got to wait for technology to progress a certain way to make you feel like your purchase is worthwhile. You're still close enough that you're like, I'm happy with where I am.
I'm one that trades monitors like every couple years my whole life. Like, because I'm in IT and I'm seeing different monitors at work and, just different things. And I always would buy different gaming monitors. Like, I've had an embarrassing amount of monitors, sometimes 2 or 3 in a year. Like, I'd buy 2 or 3 and I'd send 2 back of the 2 that I didn't like, like top end ones, and I'd keep the one I liked. The OLED has made me like, I haven't done any of that since I got it. Like, and I don't even have a call to it. Like, it's just so good. So yeah, maybe 5 years from now, maybe I'll be curious what's out, but right now it's just so good.
Good. What about video?
Well, video. I don't That's not as easy for me to define. Maybe I'll think of something after you guys have your answers.
Was it your first time seeing plasma or OLED?
I mean, it's just got to be OLED for me. Like, I didn't even see a plasma till later, and they look gorgeous, but I didn't even see one probably till in a house. I saw them in the stores, but in the stores they didn't really shine, right? Because there's so many store
No.
lights and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't probably see a plasma till in a house till probably 2019, 2020. So not even, I mean, pretty recently. And yes, they still looked really good. So OLED for me on video.
Somebody had Van Gool is asking. Oh, not that one. Where is it? Oh, Evergalton 23. Evergaten asks, which Lord of the Rings have the chains?
So that's when they're in the mines of Moria and they're getting ready to be attacked, and one of the hobbits knocks the pail down the well, and the chains clink all the way down. And Gandalf says, "Fool of a took, next time rid yourselves of our presence." Whatever. You remember that scene? That's
it's
what
towards the end of the first movie, isn't it?
I don't remember if it's the first or second movie.
I think it's the first one. I think it's towards the end of the first one. I think.
It's such a good scene.
Chad will correct me.
With Pro Audio speakers. Such a good scene.
Yeah, I need to go watch that again. I haven't seen it in some time. Bob, what about you? Start with audio.
I mean, I've been into high-end audio for a long time, so there's been kind of a couple ones, but I mean, the biggest, I think, change, at least on the theater and integration side, was either the first time Jeffrey played anything when he was configuring your new subs, or when we stopped by your house to pick up, I don't remember what it was, and you played Wolf Totem for me real quick.
Oh.
I've never really been big into the subwoofer side of things, because I generally prefer listening to music, and it's always just seemed too much or didn't integrate well, or just kind of had almost too distracting. The bass always seemed either big or bloated, or the decay time was too long, or just it didn't quite integrate right. And that happens a lot, I see, in the home theater, when everyone's just pushing so much and pushing for more output and pushing for more output at the expense of certain other things. And when I heard those, like the Pro Audio 21s, which is what the style of drivers are in those things, because they're a mid-bass monster, just hit those drum notes with that much just like speed and authority. And that was just kind of it. Like, that's the bass I want. Like, that is tight, fast. It sounds right. It's just what I expect it to be. And that's so much more than what I've had and what I've heard in the past.
Okay.
And that's what kind of made me want to change everything again.
Yeah, you had that moment like I did. We'll get to mine. But you have these moments. You have these moments. You're like, crap.
Right. There's this thing that's now better.
You
and
know
I can't
what's
unhear
coming. You know there's things that are coming. Your mind is now working. And with all three of us, things you have these massive changes because there's now some new door is unlocked that you're going through, and it just totally changes the direction your room has to come apart. We've all been through multiple iterations of our rooms.
Video for me, it would probably be where I first started really wanting to dive into that would honestly probably be right after my lightning strike. And I started putting the room back together. I painted the first third of my room flat black. It was, kind of a warm stone. The color is warm stone, but, kind of a dark taupe, all around the room, because I thought it was going to be a mixed use space. I thought I'd, get an ALR screen so I can watch something on the projector while I'm playing pool, and which I did a little bit, but I don't anymore. I painted the first third of the room black. And then I went extra crazy. Like, I painted the wall behind it black, and I took the fireplace out, and I, demoed out the mantle or the hearth so I could paint that flat black. And I kept painting more things black, and got a black couch or got, well, it was black theater seats first, but every little change made the picture that much better. And then I went from an ALR screen to a white kind of Unity grain screen, and it got better. And it's just that kind of realization that you can do things, at least on a projected image, that will make it a lot better, but you got to work for it. It's not like putting an OLED or a TV on a room and just closing a curtain. If you want to have a good projected image, you've got to work for it. It doesn't come easy.
What about, did you talk about video yet?
Yeah, the paint the room black.
Paint the room black. So mine, I have two audio ones. The first one,
my speakers are black,
is because of that guy right there. That guy. He is responsible for effectively sending me down the path that I went down. So he's, I don't know, a super villain or something, whatever we want to call him. His theater was the first one that I ever really experienced. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, when was that? COVID
timeframe?
Was it 2020? No, it was before that. 2019, maybe the beginning of 2020, I think is actually when it was. So it hasn't been that long. I haven't been doing this for too horribly long. I went over to Jonathan's because I had just gotten a bunch of stuff, and specifically subwoofers. And I remember sitting down, and he had the UM18s that he has now, and we had talked about a bunch of different subwoofers and stuff. And he played, I don't even remember what you played. And I remember just thinking, my subwoofers don't do that. And it was one of those moments, like I just said, where you know that there's no returning. So unless you're in the situation when you're returning the subwoofers. So they got returned, and I bought new ones, different ones. I went from REL 212s to JTR 4000 ULFs. I got two of them, and they went into the living room.
At the house you're in now?
No.
Okay.
No, previous house.
You should pull it up because it's such a funny picture.
Hold on. Let me see if I can find that picture. Home theater. I may not have the 4000s. Is this it? Oh, this might do it. This will show you kind of what it's a mess because we're getting ready to move when this was taken, but this will give you an indication of what this kind of looked like.
Oh, it cuts it off too much, but yes.
Hold on. Let me see if I can find one that doesn't cut it off. Is there one in here? I don't think there's one in here that doesn't cut it off.
Your living room wasn't that big to be able to
no
subs. It was like shoehorned in there for sure.
So you can see them. So this is with the RELs. Too? Oh, hold on. Nope, there it is. I have a very
immediately to the left of that left.
Yeah, it's right to the left. The house wasn't that big, and this was like as soon as you came in.
Those are the ones that went into the wall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2 4000 ULFs, Martin Logan electrostatic 15As, 34C center. So I went from these guys, the REL 212s, to that abomination. Never forget. Thanks, Jonathan, for doing that.
That's fun.
And then the next one, audio-wise, was when I went to Atlanta Home Theater. That was August of 23. 23.
That sounds
August of 23. And I heard a 2-channel demo. Historically, I had not liked horns. I had not liked coaxial drivers. I had not liked any of that stuff. And I go in, I'm like, this is going to be, this is priming. I'm perfect example of priming. I am just priming the hell out of myself to not liking this experience. And it didn't matter because as soon as that turned on, I just went, and I knew that was that half a second. As soon as they turned on, I was ripping my room apart because they did everything that my electrostatics did and more. and those speakers were not going to fit in my room. For anybody that doesn't know what the room used to look like, it looked like this. We're just going down Ryan's picture journey.
Down memory lane.
This is actually what it looked like towards the beginning. So when we first moved in, allow. Yeah, there you go. So that's what it looked like almost when we first moved into the house.
The Mad VR Experience Center.
It wasn't the Mad VR Experience Center at this point, but when we first moved in, this is kind of what it looked like, and I was super happy. Like, this is what it originally looked like, and then it ended up moving to where is a picture of me figuring out the panels. So this is when I was figuring out how to do acoustic panels and velvet, so that you're seeing my journey. You're seeing my learning process and the stages of me realizing, like, crap, I have to do this or I'm going to forever hate myself because I'm never going to know. So I got to do it. So this was me trying to plan acoustic panels and velvet. That was the black up there, was trying to figure out the velvet. Then we went to this. So then we had velvet up front. The acoustic panels went in. You guys can see we're moving to a more and more theater-like direction, right?
You
now we've
still
got
had white speaker wires at that point.
Shut up.
Do
you
see them?
You guys gave me so much crap. Yeah, you can see the white speaker wires. Tony, every time he came over, was, you still got white speaker wires? And then one time he came over and then they were black. And I don't remember when they turned black. I think it was, nope, still white in that picture. Still white. When did they turn black? Is there black in this one? Nope, still white.
I don't think they ever did. You still got white speaker.
No, they did. They did eventually. I guess I just don't have.
You still have white speaker wire now.
I do something, but this is a PG experience. Is this one? Are they black? Nope, still white. I don't know. They were white. They were black eventually because I wrapped them. Right. Then we went down the whole rabbit hole of everything else. We went down this whole terribleness of totally destroying the room, moving rooms, walls back, and doing all kinds of stuff. Where's a raw picture? Well, that's when I was painting.
I remember adding those 3 extra big giant JTRs in there that and then you decided to tear them all out.
Yeah, then I sold them because I was going a different direction because the Atlanta Home Theater thing happened and we went down this pathway. And I decided, you know what? We're going to move walls. We're going to totally gut the room that I paid a contractor to do, and we're going to start over because I'm terrible.
I remember when you wanted to dig the floor down a couple feet to raise your ceiling height.
Thought about that, and then that I do have lines at some point, and that was a line that I wasn't willing to cross because the only reason I didn't cross that line was because I was told that it wasn't possible. So that's why we didn't go down that route. Oh, but that was my audio journey. You gonna stop sharing? The video one. Oh man, what was the video one? There's no Unseeing. That was probably the first M-Wave that we did. That was the big one when we did the LS 12,000 against the JVC.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mad VR with its tone mapping and being able to do what it did to equate that equation.
Mm-hmm.
And it just stopped mattering. That was kind of the eye-opening thing. The most recent one would be Godzilla. There's no recovering from that. There's HDR in the brightness. It is over. There's no going back the other direction. Native contrast to a certain point just stopped mattering. It is gone.
The Godzilla when the projector's on 100% is.
Oh man, it is friggin' mind blowing, and it still looks dark, but that's because of the ANSI contrast.
Yeah, there's a big difference there. I mean, you watch it like I watch it at home, and I'm like, oh, that's bright, and then you watch it like 300 nits, and then you watch it at like 800, and you're just covering your eyes and diving for the floor.
Yeah.
We have a super chat in here when you guys
I see that. I will do that now. So Paul A, thank you for the $5 super chat. Much appreciated. Never required. Says $5. If you didn't have any subs, what 18-inch sub would you pick for all-around home theater performance? Jonathan, you should do a subwoofer build video. think he's directing that at you.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, having heard all the different subs I've heard and done 2 subwoofer shootouts where I'm going to be real frank here, we had people come in from all over the United States. There was about 15 guys, the kind of guys that would be willing to fly across the US to experience a subwoofer shootout. We had the top tier from all the major players at the time, JTR, Seaton, a bunch of do-it-yourself stuff like SVS, there was Empire, there was a lot of like top-end subs. The orbit shifters, sealed subs, people who came in had definite objective, subjective, let me put it that way, subjective preferences. I like ported. I like horn. I like sealed. Like you knew what you liked coming in because that was your bias and you knew what it was. We did a blind shootout in 2012 and they really all fell into performance tiers versus alignment tiers. So one of the guys who said like he made fun of ported subs for so long, it was a big kind of running gag on the forum. Like I had ported subs at the time. He's like, he lived in Omaha. His name was Husker Omaha. He said, I can hear your ported subs chuffing from here. You know, that was like, he'd always comment on my threads because port chuffing is when a ported sub digs too low below the port tune and it starts making like wind noise and all that kind of stuff. Funny, ironically enough, he liked the ported subs the best. And we had seen that over and over again. Everyone's favorite alignment, what they thought they liked the best, either they couldn't tell the difference or they were wrong. So that kind of opened up my eyes. I tell that story to get back to this. I think people have these preferences as far as like what they think they want or what they think they need. And what it really boils down to is if the subwoofer is playing clean with no distortion and you're not hitting the limits, you don't need super fancy stuff. You won't hear the difference. You objectively won't. You subjectively won't. It's only at the limits that those different alignments reveal themselves. So a sealed at its limit sounds different than a ported at its limit, sounds different than a horn at its limits. And if you don't hit those limits, you can't. And the EQ is similar, like we did EQ. If the EQ is similar, it doesn't matter. The alignments don't matter. If you're not hitting the limits, you're not hitting the limits. The distortion will be very low. So I all that to preface that I think if you can get quantity and not drive them into distortion, you have the gain of having a more equitable frequency response across the room because you have more drivers creating it. And like the Harman papers, the white papers they've studied, you get better frequency response at all seats all the way up to infinity. Like it will continue to get better matching the sub's native response as you add more subs. So
Scott Newby, we're watching you.
There's no real limit to how many you should have except for money and space. Like it gets better the more you add. If you can keep the subs in a low drive mode where they're not reaching their headroom limits or their excursion limits, they're going to sound clean and be very distortion free. So an example of that, and I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this, a guy in Kansas City named Brian Fellers is making a subwoofer wall out of like 40, 45, 12-inch, $30 drivers. I have the standing suspicion that that's going to be one of the best bass experiences anyone's ever heard. It will be his entire front wall of his theater will be those drivers. And it will be very much an impact of sound, like a wave of sound that washes over you because the subwoofers are all in alignment. And even though they're just a cheap $30 driver, I think the experience is going to be amazing. So he's going to have like $1,000, $1,200 or something in just drivers alone because he's got so many of them. And then his time in the box. And I think it will be a world-class experience. So all that to say that I don't think you have to get too hung up about which model or which alignment or how much quality. And I have example after example after example of this in my experience in the last 20 years. As long as you're not driving them to their limits, they will be fine. So I'll give you another example. These exact boxes, just in brief, these exact boxes that I have all my UM1822s in, I bought them from a cabinet shop in St. Louis. Arguably the best 18-inch driver that's ever been released, the TC Sounds LMS 5400. A friend bought some boxes, the same cabs I have, and he bought those $1,000 18s. And I bought these $250 18s. And we compared them side by side. A/B, same room. He brought his over. Same driver, same amp. We hooked up the same amp, left, right, listening to him exactly same spot. Just spent a day comparing them. Neither of us could tell the difference until they were at their absolute limits. And the limit was that you got an extra couple dB out of the TC Sounds, but they sounded the exact same. And at the end of the time, I got 4 of mine for the same price of 1 of his, and 4 of them destroyed 1 as far as output, as far as smoothing, like as far as everything. Like 1 to 1, they were almost identical. 1 to 4, it was like mine ran away with it. So at that end of the day, he said, tell me why I spent this much money on my subs? Because we both read on the forums, like, this is the one to get. So he wanted the best. That's the reason he bought those. I want the best sub there is. And then when you really got down to the comparison, we couldn't hear the difference. We couldn't measure the difference besides just having an extra couple dB. So that's where my head's at. I don't think I'd get lost on the brand or anything. I'd make sure that you're in the performance specs, that you're not going to the limits of the excursion, and that you're keeping distortion low, and you're going to like it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you need to define what you want to do and how you want it to perform from a performance standpoint in the room, and then buy equipment that meets that standard.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you need to do. People need to stop buying equipment when they don't have a standard, right? If you don't know what you want to do, maybe you're just listening at a moderate listening volume or something. Buying equipment that goes so far beyond that, it doesn't really matter. But if you need the extreme, only the extreme equipment's going to be able to do it. You just got to define what level you're trying to reach. Unfortunately, the further up you go, up the pyramid, up that ladder, the more expensive that ends up getting. So anyway, I think
thanks
we
for the
answered
question
your
through the super chat, Paul. We appreciate it.
I think we answered that. Speaking of the subs, can I have a clarification on subs? What about mids, tweeters, or highs? Russell, what exactly do you mean by this? Do you have any idea, either of you?
Is he saying does it matter? Like is he saying does it matter? It does matter.
Yeah. Yes. It does matter. Especially again, as you start getting into the extremes of output. That's where things really start to differentiate.
And unlike subs, you got a lot of directivity and other issues that you can get involved with mids and highs. That's plus they run out of output really fast.
They do, which is why there's so many different materials, and then there is a subjective choice based on materials because they will sound different.
And they'll break up at they'll have very different breakup modes, some much earlier than others. And that is audible for certain people. It depends on how high your hearing is.
Yeah.
Certain people can't hear beyond certain frequencies. So they get out of they don't have to worry about a lot of the tweeter breakup modes because they can't hear them.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree with that.
I want to be careful here because this question kind of feeds back to the other question. I don't want anyone to walk out of this thing saying Jonathan says any sub will do. That is not what I'm saying at all. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm kind of a subwoofer snob. I'm saying, like, I would say if you're going to buy an individual sub, I wouldn't spend less than about $1,000 if you're buying like internet direct subs, because that's kind of the threshold where you get into like a high tier sub. As far as a do-it-yourself, the driver itself might only be $250 or $300, but the whole package, I'm saying, is about $1,000 threshold. Yep. If you have less than that, you're going to be stacking up a lot of 12s or a lot of 15s to get the output you want. So, like, we're talking like that HSU VTF 15H we talked about earlier. That's no longer on the market, but its successor is. It's pretty much the same thing. That's like kind of the entry level tier for me. That would be acceptable. I'm not saying go to your local Radio Shack and buy the cheapest one on the floor and it will work. That's not the case. They don't have good excursion. They don't have good, like, they're not going to be able to produce the low frequencies at all. They don't have strong motors. Like, if you get a good driver though, it doesn't matter so much the alignment. It doesn't matter so much like once you reach a certain threshold of quality tier, $200 to $300. The Stereo Integrity HT18 V3 or whatever. That's an example. That's a $200 driver.
Well, I think it's important to clarify for people that you're talking about drivers, not the entire system.
I'm talking about drivers, and I'm talking about multiples. So you pick a competent driver, and you can get into that to the $200 to $400 range. You don't have to spend buku dollars. Mm-hmm. You spend a competent driver. You build a box. You apply it the right amount of power. You get the quantity you need to get the SPL you need and not overdrive them, because the behavior at limits will be better for more expensive things too. Like the cheaper subs don't have good limiters. They don't have like the shorting coils and rings and stuff that will help protect the driver. They'll make bad sounds, all that kind of stuff. The motor structure isn't strong enough to keep the cone in check. You buy a competent driver and you buy enough of them, and it could even be like this $30 driver we're talking about. He's buying 50 of them, right? I'm not saying a cheap driver is good. I'm saying a lot of cheap drivers can be good.
But to be clear, it's not normally a $30 driver.
Normally,
it's normally $100.
Yes.
So these things that we're talking about, while we're talking about one or two of them, these price points add up exponentially quick. But when you're talking about systems, you're talking about cabs, you're talking about insulation, you're talking about amps, the drivers, then you have to have the expertise to be able to implement them.
True.
Because you don't have onboard DSP. You're having to do a lot of that yourself, though you can get away with not doing it potentially and get lucky. There's things that
the
sometimes
DSP is
it's just
important
worth
and the
paying
port
for.
pin is important. Yes.
Yeah.
Because like I told you earlier in the podcast, I had 4 15-inch car audio subs and they didn't do anything because I didn't know how to DSP them. I didn't have the box set to the right size. I just threw them in a box. I didn't think I didn't really know it even mattered. That's not going to work. You're not going to like the results.
No.
There's knowledge that has to come with what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, you can easily hit excursion limits. You can have also, you can run into distortion issues. You can wind up with vastly unflat curves depending upon what kind of driver you use.
One note wonders, exactly. And
pro audio drivers are very much like that. If you don't imply a lot of DSP to them with certain types of enclosures, big, light pro audio drivers with big motor structures in small sealed boxes need a lot of DSP to get a flat response.
And this is something that I think a lot of people get themselves into trouble with when they get on the AVS forums or any forum for that matter. And like, oh, this is a cheap avenue that I can go to get this level of performance, but they don't have the knowledge to be able to back up what they're actually getting themselves into, right? Because there's a lot of things, and you can get away with it. You can read an AVS, but then you yourself are becoming an expert. So you've got to weigh, what is my time worth? And what is me learning this worth?
Invaluable, because once you understand that, honestly, I think it's a great thing to build as long as you have the finances and the time that you're okay with throwing away the money that you have spent on that project. If you want to go out there and build a pair of speakers, that's a really good thing to do just at least once. And whether it's a kit or something small, build a subwoofer, you get a lot of understanding about how the thing goes together, how it actually works, how it performs, what you need to do behind it. It'll help you with a lot of your system, but the result you get is probably, there's a good chance it's not going to turn out right the first time. If you're willing to accept that, and that's the price you pay for the knowledge, that's a really good thing to have. But saying, I'm going to save money in my system by doing it myself from the first time with not having experience with tools or equipment or anything like that, you're probably not going to.
You can get away with it, but
you can learn, but there's a cost to the knowledge. It doesn't come for free unless you just happen to either be really lucky or naturally talented.
At the end of this, all we're saying is it's not an easy path necessarily if you want to do it yourself. There is always a give and take. There's always a compromise.
But it's extremely rewarding.
A finished system, you are trading money for not having to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing. So you've got to decide, what is my time worth? How much money is that? How much money is that worth?
But if you want to do the DIY stuff, there are competent designed, not fully DIY, but I mean, I want to call
cookie cutter templates to build.
Yeah, you can call it an IKEA sub or whatever, but I mean, it kind of is. You can get the flat packs from GSG or from other companies, and it's a competent, well-made box that's easy to assemble. Their instructions are great. You can do it yourself. It doesn't require a lot of skill because someone else has done the design work. If you want to say, I'm going to buy a driver from someone, go to Home Depot and buy some plywood and get to work, that's a different prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all we're saying is think about the decision and be careful, because it's a little bit more complicated than we may let on.
So K for Constant said, hey, and I know he's joking from some of the comments, but he bought some Bic subs and that was a mistake, or was it? I would say buying Bic subs, and this is a little subwoofer snottery coming out, is not a good idea. And I've been around them several times, and I've been around people that have bought several of them.
I think you were kidding, but
yeah, he was kidding. The problem with it is that they're ported and they don't go below like 27, 30 hertz, maybe 26, 25 at most. They will never, no matter how many you add, that's their port tune. No matter how many you add, they will not be able to go deeper than that, because the port tune, anything below the port tune is like harmonics and distortion and not good sound. It's not true tones. And so you can have a room full of those things and you're never going to produce those bottom couple octaves because they can't do it. So if you're going to buy a competent sub, that's why I'm saying like you kind of get up to that $1,000 area, because you want something that's like 16 hertz tuned and you want something that's got a lot of excursion. So you're not really limited. That's kind of like that entry point to me. Bic is not the entry point. Bic is I will upgrade later, or I'm not that interested in this hobby type sub. Without being rude, that's where that falls.
I
And you have no path to do but to upgrade later, unless you're satisfied with it as it is.
So these are the types of questions that I see a lot in regards to, now that we're on the topic of subwoofers. It's things like Dan Jones asking, is it better to have 4 18 subs with 10 millimeter X Max or 2 18 subs with 20 millimeter X Max?
Neither. Those are all bad.
That's really bad. Maybe he was just using that as an example, right? Like more X Max, less subs. What do you think? There's a lot more variables that go into that. And I think this goes back to the JVC thing of do not just hyper focus on one variable.
So if you're doing pro audio subs, they're going to have less X Max. So that, I mean, if you're in that realm, it might be a different story. But I don't think pro audio subs are necessarily, if you're just buying two, I don't know that that's the right way to go for a home theater setup. 10 millimeters is like not really enough.
That's a midwoofer.
We're talking like the Stereo Integrity, the $200 driver I'm talking about, that's like mid-20s. The UM1822, that's almost 30 millimeter X Max. So that's the $200 to $300 driver level. You don't need to be buying something with less than that, because for just a little bit more money, you're not going to get a super cheap 18s. They just don't make them. So for just a little bit more than the junk that you might find on Amazon, step up to like a Stereo Integrity or a UM1822. Don't buy that junk. Now, if you're talking pro audio, it's a different conversation, because there can be some very nice pro audio subwoofers that will have 10 millimeters of X Max or 20
But
millimeters.
you're trading that X Max for surface area.
Excursion and low frequency and all those things. Yes.
You'll hit 15, 17 in a lot of those pro audio drivers. Some of them will hit 20, but you're not going to get much beyond that. With the triple accordion like surrounds, they just don't have that kind of travel.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another one of those questions of Paul Arso says, so 3 open box SB3000s for $850 each, or 1 SB17 for $2,400?
I haven't seen the SB17 yet.
It's a moderately better SB16.
It's barely better, isn't it? Like barely. Are we talking like a dB or two on the real world test?
I'm just saying moderately.
I'd have to look at specs of SB. Is the 3000? Is that a 10 or 12?
Forget the actual models here. Would you take 3 entry level subs? Like your
Are SB3000 truly entry? Are they entry?
Well, they're $850 each. You were talking about 1,000. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on the metric.
That's not how it's been $850, frankly. Unless are they 12s? Let me go look them up. I haven't been on SVS site.
I'm looking
I want to say they're
now.
11s.
It's a 13-inch driver.
Oh, well, there you go.
Man, the old PB13s, those were 13s. Oh, but it's not. It's definitely not the PB13 driver.
No, it's a sealed.
It's the sealed version. It's the step down from the 13. It's the 3000.
I kind of have a soft spot for SVS. I still think they make a good product. A 13's not not terrible. That's not terrible. There's been a lot of people for a lot of years that were very satisfied with that size.
But would you get this or a shoe for not much more than this?
I personally would buy the shoe, because you're getting a 15 and a bigger box, and the bigger box is ported, which means you have more output, 6 to 10 dB more output with the same size driver around port frequencies. And I think the shoe is tuned low enough to really be enjoyable like that.
But the other thing on there is look at your space and look at your
maybe
he
wants smaller. Yes.
If you need smaller because you're in a limited space limited room to actually position these things, you might be better off with the 3, just because you can move them into more optimal positions, because you're not going to dig down as low by any stretch, but you might have a better coverage in your particular environment. Without knowing your setup and how that goes together, that's going to be a tough one. Or if you
this
want
was the only choice and we weren't talking anything else, I'm going 3 here. What are you guys doing?
I don't know how big the room is.
And I was never planning on upgrading 3. But my mindset is always get the biggest, baddest subwoofer you can afford now and then get another one later.
Right.
Now, if you were talking 2 SB17s, it's a different story.
What is going to happen, though, what's going to happen in this situation is he's going to buy the SB3000s.
And then he's going to want to upgrade.
And then he's going to upgrade.
Absolutely.
Because he's already thinking about the SB17. And this is exactly why you do what I just said of you buy one now because you know you're going to get another one later.
Yep.
And
that's solid logic. Buy the SB17 if you're stuck on SVS, if you really want SVS, and then wait till next year's, bonus and buy another one.
It's going to happen.
Their next big sale, yeah.
Because you listen to us and we're bad influences. Not only on you, but on each other. I mean, Jonathan's made me spend, I don't even know how much. He comes over and shoves my face down in hot coals like, you will spend that money. You guys just don't see it on camera, unfortunately. So I would get the SB17, no question at all. Where did we derail? How did we end up on subwoofers?
The other part of this, though, we got to keep in mind is
We're
how
back
many
on
people
subwoofers.
how many people would say like I don't need more than 313s.
Nobody listening to this stream.
I think there's a lot of people that have.
There's a lot of people that would say that, especially until they've heard it.
But even they might not ever hear it.
And that's the thing. If you've never heard it,
but I gotta say, like, I mean, you gotta think it's high 90% would say I don't ever need anything more than 313s.
Way more than that. I mean,
high 90%. I mean, that's high, that's where I'm at. I mean, I just don't.
We're at a very small majority of the.
Oh, absolutely.
Even of enthusiasts, there's a lot of people on AVS forum. They're like, why do you need all those subs? So yeah, there's some reality check in there sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all speaking from personal experience. I know if that were me when I was first starting out, I would be happy with SB3000s until I went to Jonathan, and then I would regret that decision wholeheartedly.
Yeah, well, and I'm a bass head from high school, so like I've always car audio, always liked bass. So I mean, if you're in that situation, if you know you've always liked bass, you skip the SB3000 and probably skip the SB17. You probably ought to be going to a bigger one. Okay, sorry.
Back to questions. Okay. That was a good derailment. That was good. That was fun. We'll probably end up back there here in a few minutes. All right, Van Gool. This was posted like as soon as we started. Cables or projectors? Do you really see what your projector can do?
Huh?
If you don't have a cable, you can't see anything out of your projector? Question mark. I'm not sure.
I mean, you can see the settings menu, so you can see something. Is Van Gool saying that if you don't have good cables, you're not going to you're leaving stuff on the table?
The only time you're leaving issues on the table with an HDMI cable is if it doesn't work.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate of this, but can you guys star some stuff if you see any questions come in?
I mean, this goes kind of even on that same. You don't need a $10,000 HDMI cable. It will do nothing that a $100 HDMI cable and probably even a $50 HDMI cable won't do.
Yeah.
If you are using the extremes of the cable, then it becomes more important on delivering, being able to deliver and by extremes, I mean length and bandwidth.
Yes. So I don't necessarily subscribe to it'll either work or it won't. I guess it depends on how we define it won't. Like if there's any definable problem in it, and we're saying that means it doesn't work.
Right. If you get flicker, if you get sync issues, then it's not working right.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's fine. But there's a lot of issues that come up that people, I think, don't know that are cables, especially when they come to HDCP and especially as it comes to HDMI 2.1. Their cables suck. HDMI sucks. The whole thing sucks. And why we chose this, I don't know. It just sucks. But as long as it works, like as long as you get a good cable that handshakes properly and it locks on good, don't chase that. You're not going to gain anything. Air correction, like in Ethernet with HDMI, is so good you will never notice.
Mm-hmm.
You can't know. It won't happen. Like it won't happen. So people that are like, oh, you see that sparkle and stuff, they need to get their eyes checked.
Yeah, that's not HDMI.
Maybe they have like metal flakes that have gotten embedded in their eyes or something. I don't know. But cable, as long as the cable works and it works well and it's passing the signal appropriately with correct voltage and current across all the buses, you're fine.
You can't go buy a $10,000 Vision Journey cable that will make your picture better.
Now, using converters and stuff, you can absolutely go the other way, though. And people do this all the time, even integrators, and they have no idea that they're doing it. There is, I don't think, a HDMI converter on the market that will do like HDMI over Ethernet that does a conversion that does it fully losslessly. It always has some level of lossy. Whether or not it's detectable, I don't know, but I've had numerous conversations with HDMI guys, and I don't think one exists yet. Over Ethernet. You can do like the fiber dongles and stuff, but over Ethernet. I don't know that one exists. So just be very careful.
That's a lot of
Evaluate the
bandwidth
whole
to pass
equation.
over Ethernet too.
Yeah. Good question.
Look, at some point we got to stop starring because we're not making any progress in the stars.
I'm not starring. Are you guys starring? I'm
I
answering.
can't
questions.
star. I'm not allowed.
I'm starring, and I'm going to put on my restraining order at this point.
All right.
We got 20, and we still got 2 hours.
All
I'm
right.
like 2 hours in.
Why have all of those subs in your? Oh, we already did.
We did that one. Yep.
Need a new Blu-ray player. Thoughts on the new Panasonic UB450? Is it a decent budget option, even over the 420? Using it with an LS12000.
You know those times when you don't know what the audience knows? That's right now.
I didn't even know they made a new one.
I didn't either.
My guess would be it's not any different.
My thought would be to buy the disc, rip it, and then play it via Plex because it's more convenient.
My actual first impression is that it's probably the exact same internals with a different exterior.
Hit up AVS forum and look at some of the guys that do the stress testing on with the AV demos and the patterns and everything. See what those guys say, because we don't know on that. There's really critical people out there that do a lot of good research on that. They'll know the answer to that faster than we will.
Have they found any issues with the UB420?
No, they're still the forum darling all these years later. The 420 and the 820 and the 9000 are still the highest recommended Blu-ray players, and those things came out like 10 years ago.
So our assumption is that the UB450 is probably fine. Just make sure you dot your T's and cross your I's.
Now, that being said, the reason people like it is for the HDR tone mapping. I don't think they're that great if you're just going to use it as a standard play rate and you don't need the tone mapping, because their interface is clunky and their web streaming is it's crap.
They all suck.
Well, they surely don't suck this bad, but
I don't know, man.
The UB420 felt old when it came out.
The Magnetar is just as clunky.
Now, that being said, the HDR tone mapping, it's the best there is in the product market. So that's why people recommend it. But if you don't need that, if you're running an OLED or something, you don't need that, then don't pain yourself.
Even an LS12000, though, I don't know if there'd be any reason to chase that on that. The tone mapping on
alternative.
I already lost the LS12000. It is beneficial for the LS12000 because you can set luminance level down, and the Panasonic will tone map to like 600 nits, which then allows the Epson to perform a little better.
But what is the alternative? What other player would you
People
choose?
like Sony's a lot of times, and if you don't need HDR tone mapping, people tend to like Sony's a little better, I think, is common forum knowledge as far as what I read.
Oh.
I haven't had a Sony player in a long time. I got an LG player upstairs.
Do we need to do a Blu-ray or a UHD player comparison?
I wonder if that turned out like our Dolby Vision versus HDR.
Someone said,
well, Jonathan likes the snow more on this one.
The clipped one.
So a couple of the guys have mentioned that the 450 does not have tone mapping.
Okay. Is it cheaper than the 420?
The 420 can be had at $250.
So wouldn't that be confusing? It's got a higher model number, but it's cheaper.
I don't know. What's it cost?
I don't know.
450 is under 200, someone says in the comments.
Well, then yes, it would be cheaper.
No streaming apps? They really stripped it down.
It's $170 on
Who
Amazon.
streams through a Blu-ray player?
If it didn't stink, I might do it if I was already in there.
I guess if you have a projector
if you have a projector that doesn't have any apps, yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
You mean like the Christie? One of those that doesn't have any apps? Mine
or the Epson or the JVC or the Sony or...
Don't even get me started on the Christie. Like, I love the Christie and I love Barco and stuff, but man, I feel like the higher you go, the less features you get and the more dependent you are on other devices in the signal chain. Like that projector, it has to have a video processor. The HDR is just the tone mapping. So it's not immune to its own problems.
You know, do you guys have a Blu-ray player that doesn't stink as far as the interface is?
No, they all suck. That's what I was saying. I have a Magnetar.
I played through the Xbox and its interface is awful, especially when it switches into DVD mode.
He's even got a gaming console and it still sucks. I mean, they're all bad.
Because it pops up some app and the app is absolutely terrible.
It doesn't matter. They're all bad.
Like, if I buy a movie on disc, I rip it and then I watch it on Plex.
This is why things like Kaleidoscape, you do not buy for thinking there's going to be a fidelic difference. It is because these other devices, user interfaces suck.
Yeah.
They're so bad.
I love to buy the physical disc because that way, if it moves on a streaming platform or wherever else, I still have a copy of it. It's just in a folder or a box in the closet. But I will never go get a physical disc out to watch it because I'm just not going to go through the trouble.
It's so annoying.
Man, I still have nightmares about our little comparison where you had two Panasonic players and the interfaces were super clunky and the remotes was controlling both of them. And
oh wait,
that was awesome.
That just happened.
We're trying to hold the remotes like
no, I didn't want that one to play. I need this one here, and it's playing, and then that one's stopping, and it's just
everything takes 3 seconds
to
respond. Nightmare. Yeah, terrible.
What a nightmare. But we made it work. MW says, John, was there any reason you went with an 18 and not 21s?
Yeah, just height. I wanted to fit with the recline, so a 21 would be just that much taller. That's all. And I already had 18, so I'm just staying with the family.
Wouldn't have had to do any of this if we put an 80-inch subwoofer in the back of his room. Do it all with one subwoofer.
80-inch.
Abe Froman says, hey guys, new user of Mad VR Envy Extreme. I could use some help with profiles. I have 2 projectors, a JVC NZ8 and a DLP. How do I best organize and use them the way NVR and Mad VR intends with stack method and not preset?
What DLP does he have? That's my curiosity. NZ8 and DLP? Something in the DLP family kept up enough for him to keep it? Because you're not going to have 2 things hooked up to Mad VR, are you? 2 different projectors?
I mean, you could.
Does it have 2 outputs? I don't even know.
No, you'd run it into like a splitter or something, or a switch, ideally. Yeah, you could do that. I could use some help with profiles. I have 2 PJs, and how do I best organize and use them? Well, really, the only thing you need to change, well, a couple things, is you need to set a profile for each projector. 1 profile. 1 for this, 1 for this. 1 for JVC, 1 for, I'm going to call it a Panasonic, and the other one's for a Panasonic. Or an old Christie or something, okay? One of them, you need to set your peak luminance, and you need to set your black and white balance. You need to set your gamma, your color space, and your screen boundaries. And then in the other one, you do the exact same thing. And then you're able to toggle back and forth between those profiles. Or the easier way to do it, if you just want to have a true toggle, is your base profile or your base settings are for one projector, and then you activate a profile that changes the settings for the other one. So you have a couple different ways to do it. But Abe, if you need more help on that, just email me. You can send it to web@hometheatersavants.com, and I can help you out and get you taken care of.
Abe, send me a PM and I'll give you Ryan's number, but only if you call him at 3 a.m. That's the only way I'll give you his number. Little deviant there. I'm about to get turned.
he knew it was coming. He knew it was coming. And the fact that I got you right when you were saying it just makes it even better. Oh, good times. Good times. We already answered the question about frame interpolation on the LS12000. Miguel Munez says, I already have the U mic. What else do I need to calibrate my theater? A whole lot of patience and willpower.
If you want to do video, a colorimeter, you can get some decent ones. It depends on what projector you have these days.
Definitely not Dr. Meter.
Well, Dr. Meter's not a colorimeter, but yes, Dr. Meter needs to go back to a night school to get his.
Jonathan,
yes.
Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Meter is should be disbarred.
So it really depends on the AVR and preamp you have. If you've got something like Denon and Marantz and you're using Odyssey, or even Yamaha with YPOW, or Sony with their proprietary one, or ARC with Anthem. I mean, they all come with microphones.
Yep. Unless it's running direct.
You would use their own onboard microphones unless you've done something with direct. Then you're going to use the U mic. But if you're using any of those, a lot of times you have the ability to go in and do a limited PEQ. So you would measure using the U mic in REW, or if you have an Omni mic in the Omni mic suite, measure, look at your response, and then create filters, either having REW do it for you, or doing it manually in PEQ in the device, and making the changes as necessary. But again, the things that you need are a lot of patience and a lot of willpower, because like subwoofer box design and speaker design, it is a learning process.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why people pay the pros, because they don't want to use their time to do it. They'd rather pay somebody that's all they do, and that's what they do for a living. So
Yeah, well,
they're not reinventing the wheel.
Depending upon the room calibration system you have, I mean, certain ones require a lot more manual intervention than others, or there's certain settings you can tweak, and just certain tricks to getting each individual system to do its best. There's lots of comments on the forums about one way or the other to do it. Generally, you can find some pretty good advice on them, but it just depends upon what parts of it you're trying to calibrate. If you're just doing it through a processor or an AVR, if you're using an external like mini DSP, if you're trying to do video also, with video, I mean, if you're trying to just do it with a cheaper colorimeter, make sure you have a right spectral profile for that. So certain ones are available that you can find to download. Some people have made them. With laser light sources, they aren't necessarily as accurate. So results may vary there.
Anything else, Jonathan?
I'd just say tinker, man. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Like as far as your calibration that your receiver does, you may or may not like the auto EQ. Rip out the manual EQ. Try playing with a different frequency. Slide them all the way at the top. Slide them all the way down the bottom. Listen to what 8 kilohertz does to your sound. See if you like it. Make a little happy face EQ. See what you like there. Run auto EQ. Turn it off. Play with it manually. Move subs around in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then rerun auto EQ to set the distances again and listen to that for a while. Take time to set it up. When you're placing your speakers, as far as like how far in to dial them, put them on a French cleat so you can move them around and see what you like. I mean, like, I just think tinkering is the right way to go, and take lots of time and be willing to take lots of time to set it up. It's like a fun investigative process that can take many years, and that's okay. That's my opinion.
Good answer. Randy asks, so is the Mad VR Extreme the only thing that can do this properly? He's talking about motion interpolation without the soap opera effect or Gemini Man look.
I think the Epson does a good job of not having soap opera effect.
But Gemini Man didn't have soap opera. It was just that it was not what we were used to watching. That's what it was. It's not that it was wrong. It's just it was not 24p.
Yeah.
I don't see it with the LS12000 and QB1000 in that vein, so I think those work great.
But did you have a problem with Gemini Man, or do you like it?
I don't even know if I've watched Gemini Man at 60 hertz. I don't
Do you even watch movies?
I've watched the movie. I just don't know if I watched it at 60 hertz.
I don't even know if I've ever seen Gemini Man.
Oh my gosh. What am I?
I would have watched it on Blu-ray, and it would have been years ago, and I don't know if it would have been 60 hertz on Blu-ray. I don't even know if they would have done it that way.
Nope, I never saw that movie. I know which one it is, but I never saw it.
It's the I've watched it. Will Smith. He's got he fights his younger self and all that.
Yeah. I've never seen it, but I know which one it was.
It's not that good. That's my spoiler.
Yeah, it's not. I would say, Randy, that Mad VR does it the best. And maybe I'm biased.
I don't know, but that's okay.
You think that the LS12000 does it
better than Mad VR to my eyes. Now, I haven't seen what you guys are talking about, the 4K 120. That might change.
Very different.
But when I've seen the motion in your theater, Ryan, I like the motion in my theater better. That's subjective choice. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. There isn't. But to my eyes, I prefer the LS12000 motion.
I will say that
wrong.
I've been hit or miss on the Mad VR's motion until the 4K 120. It's substantially better.
I'm curious to see that, because I don't think I've seen that.
No.
I think Randy, it's subjective. You got to play with it. The biggest thing that's going to be a holdup for a lot of people is we have watched, and people have watched 24p content for so long that getting away from that habit is very difficult to do. So regardless of the soap opera effect or not, it takes time to adjust. Everyone that looks at it is not going to go, oh yeah, this is just better. You got to break the habit. You've got to break away from the mold that you've been doing for so long and give it time to grow. And what we end up seeing in a lot of cases, regardless if it's on Mad VR or not, whatever motion interpolation or however you're doing it, if people move away from it and then try and go back to 24, it's very hard to do. because you've now seen it. There, like we've talked about this whole stream, there is no unseeing. Once
No.
you have given yourself the opportunity to see it, going back is, for most people, it's not going to happen.
I don't disagree with your full premise, but I disagree in one context to your premise. Like I agree with the fact that I don't want to go back to 24 frames per second. I don't want to see that. I don't think sometimes that you have to like grow into that. Like the moment I turned on the LS12000 frame interpolation, the moment I was like, wow.
But you
I've
grew
loved
into
it from
it through
day
gaming.
one.
You grew into it through gaming.
Okay, maybe. But I've
I
never
think
seen it before the LS12000. I never saw frame interpolation I liked, period. And but I don't know that I've seen it since, besides the QB1000.
low on the LS12000, and I'm the same way. I don't like it. For almost everything, I turn it off. I thought the low on the LS12000 was acceptable. It's at the minimum where I liked it. I thought the QB1000 was better.
And like from moment one, right? Like you're
Well,
like,
the second we turn it on,
Yeah,
like
that
we're
looks
looking for brightness, we're looking for tone mapping, we're looking for all this extra output. I'm like, I don't care about anything else. The motion's better, and that wasn't even
We
the
all
thing we were there to
commented on
test.
that and immediately said motion's better.
And it was just noticeably better. It was smoother. It looked less
It wasn't
artificial.
a lot better, but it was noticeably better.
Right.
Like I want to make that clear, guys. It wasn't night and day. It was just better.
I think like the LS2000 is like good or very good, and I think the QB1000 is like excellent. That's how I would rate the motion interpolation.
I would never question turning it on the QB1000. I'd be on the fence on certain content on the 12,000. I like it sometimes, and I don't like it other times.
Mm-hmm. And it's all subjective. Like different people are going to see that different ways. Like Sheldon says he doesn't like the LS12000 frame interpolation. So, different eyes see different ways. That's all.
But honestly, I don't even really mind 24p. I don't like it when it's up converted to 60.
Well, that's because it's wrong.
24p feels like a PowerPoint slideshow to me at this point.
It does.
I'd rather watch it than that at 60, though.
Yes.
But frame interpolated up to 120, though, is different.
Jonathan, actually, one reason you may have not have liked the motion on the Envy recently is because there was a point when I thought it was on and it was not, and it was doing 2-3 pull down.
No, I don't hate it. It's not like it's distasteful to me, but it feels a little bit more fake to me than the LS12000's.
Well,
not as bad as mini TVs, not as probably in the top realm, but not as good as what I'm used to, in my opinion. And I don't know what your settings were because how would I know? But
we'll have to play with that. Tiki Time says, "Will HDMI 2.2?" God,
now you've made Ryan mad.
Just allow higher frame rate. Why? Will we see 8K DVD players and content? Your thoughts?
The biggest problem with 8K is that most people can't see it with the size of display they have at the seating.
We don't even use it now.
Yeah,
we can. We can do 8K 60, but we don't use it.
You can do 8K 60 right now on a JVC.
Now
on 2.1, correct?
On 2.1.
But we don't use it. There's no
sources. 120.
There are no sources outside of a PC,
some YouTube stuff, maybe
YouTube TV,
specialized
or YouTube
device, and gaming consoles. Not even gaming consoles.
No, not gaming consoles.
PCs are.
Yep.
Not even hardly PCs because you don't have the graphics card that can run that high of a frame rate at reasonable frame rates.
I could throw out of a 4070 Ti. You could do 8K.
You could do it
playing Wolfenstein, not the new stuff.
No, I'm saying as far as streaming video.
Oh,
and doing something like to throw it onto a projector. You could do 8K 60 out of a 4070 Ti all day long, and it didn't have any issues playing video.
Can you imagine looking how small the font would be to try to read your projector?
Very, very small. And especially because on a JVC it has to E-shift, so it's not.
I've done it. Yeah, you can't.
4K is too small for me to read on my screen.
The Envy will do it.
Native scaling.
The Envy will do 8K upscaling. And if you send that to the JVC, it'll do 8K. It's E-shifted, but it'll do 8K. It's very small.
It's very small.
It's like you got to probably be within a couple feet to read text.
Even on a huge screen, it's very small.
Oh yeah.
But again, the problem is your visual acuity is not that sharp. You can find charts out there of average human visual acuity at certain seating distances and how close you actually have to be to see the difference between a 1080 and a 4K signal and a 4K and an 8K signal. You got to be right on top of that. Your field of view has got to be what, greater than like 60 degrees or something like that to even notice the difference. You've got to be really close.
Both of you will agree. Resolution should not be near the top of your list when buying a display.
No, I agree with you.
Unless it's a monitor and you're sitting right up on top of it and stuff, then yeah, you're going to be.
I think for projectors is what you're mentioning.
For projectors, yes.
For projectors, it's brightness and native contrast and ANSI.
Now, there are outliers. Like if the screen is absolutely enormous and stuff, there are situations where it can be beneficial because your pixel structure gets so big and blah, blah, blah. But I do not see this as a benefit. For gaming, yes. For increased frame rates and stuff and maybe some fixing HDMI 2.1, HDMI consortium, fix it. Don't just unleash another
broken
ball of crap again.
Well, so much of that stuff could work if it's the copyright people to get into all of it. Once the lawyers and the copyright stuff gets involved, that's where all the problem.
They changed how EDIDs were transmitted because they had to expand EDID support. So instead of sending EDID over one strand of copper, it's sent over multiple buses, and it just causes all kinds of pandemonium. So not only is it HDCP, it's EDID stuff, and there's a bunch of crap. So hopefully, it's funny that we're finally starting to get cables that work, and then we're changing it.
I don't know what you're talking about. This Rui Pro blue one that everyone hated is still working just great.
Yeah, there are some that work, and then until they don't. Anyway, don't hyper focus on this. We'll see what they do. They could do some cool stuff like, what was it, QMS or whatever they did that everybody was super excited about and then nobody used.
It can look absolutely brilliant. It can be amazing, but the problem is you got to be right up on top of it to tell the difference.
Yeah, but I'm saying there could be some cool stuff that we're not thinking about that maybe they released that'll be awesome. And then
I still want QMS. Why didn't that ever get delivered?
I don't know.
That would have solved my 5 to 7 second switching time.
White Glove Review. Hey, Jonathan, what is your HPF on your NX6000D for the UM1822S? What's your process for aligning?
HPF.
What's your process for aligning them and adding house curves?
Yeah, we talked about this just on the last stream, actually. So I use Auto EQ to set my distances, and I've validated that that's spot on by doing it manually. And manually is nothing more than just running sweeps and setting up each sub at one at a time and making sure that you change the distance until the cumulative overlays of the two subs, the cumulative average of them goes up. So like as you change the distance, you'll notice that it'll go down, it'll kind of vary around. If you're perfectly on phase, if your time alignment is perfect, the overall SPL will go up as you add each sub. So do 1 and then do 2 and then do 3. You're lining it with like one speaker type thing. That's how I do it manually. I found that Odyssey does a pretty good job of aligning it on my AV10 to the exact, in fact, when I did it manually and when I did it auto, it was 0.1 exactly. Like the smallest dimension on the AV10 is 0.1 feet, and it was 0.1 feet where I landed and where the Auto EQ landed. And I did my manual first, so I didn't even know what the Auto EQ was going to do. When I did the Auto EQ, it did the exact same number I landed on. So that's good enough for me. As far as adding house curves, that's to taste, man. That's all over the board. I've been in a lot of different rooms with a lot of different preferences where some people like 20 dB below 20 hertz added up there. They really like that thing to spike up so they get all the feel. I don't like all that. I like 9 to 12 dB hotter than the mains. So, and I like it to raise up gradually at just the crossover, and I like it to run flat. So I want smooth bass and I want it elevated. And by virtue of elevating it, it makes my crossover much higher than the 120 hertz I use. It's probably up at 150, 180 or something. That's kind of starting to trail back down. There's a video on there. White Glove, go to my channel, Javon England. You'll find some videos on there of how I run my stuff with screenshots and everything else, like some videos showing how I run it on the amps, the DSP, all that kind of thing.
So what Jonathan note that he said that he got the same answer as the software, but what he didn't tell you is he wrote down, do what Odyssey tells you to do. And then he just changed it after he got
No, once you get an OmniMic or REW and you start playing with this, it's really intuitive because you start running sweeps. You take a sweep, you add the second sub. You should get, by virtue of adding a second sub somewhere in the room, you should get 3 dB more output. in the base frequencies. If your line doesn't go up 3 dB and it goes down 3 dB, they're out of phase. This is general. You're not going to get 3 dB up exactly across the entire frequency because of modes and nulls in the room. But on average, if you don't go up 3 dB and you go down 3 dB, you're out of phase. You got to reverse the phase. So switch the positive and negative on the sub because one of them's out of thing. So that's the bare minimum. Now, as you adjust distance, up 1 foot, down 1 foot, add seconds, milliseconds, whatever, as you increase or decrease, you'll notice that the amount that increases over the first sub changes. Maybe it's 2.5 dB, and now you get 3 dB if you change the distance a little bit. So every time you double your subs, as long as you're not stacking them, you should get 3 dB. And so you kind of just play that game, and you can watch it go up manually, and you can dial it in that way exactly. I think I said the same thing twice. Now you know.
Now you know.
Experiment, man. You got to tinker.
Anyone know if True Cut Motion is still working on movies? Cameron used their frame interpolation process on Titanic and Avatar re-releases, but I've heard almost nothing about it since. I know nothing about this.
Nope. Never heard of it.
I don't know anything about it either.
Well, sorry for letting you down, Willie. If you were waiting around for us to answer you, we are...
You came to the wrong experts, Willie. Try again.
Not that. Trias, great show, guys. Building a gaming PC, home theater PC. Thoughts on choosing a mid or highest I can afford GPU? I have a 5040 UB, so 4K 60 bottleneck, but upgrade path is LS12000. So do I get the best GPU I can? I don't like this path on the GPU. I think it's the same thing that people take with AVRs and preamps and stuff. They have a tendency to buy based on the premise that they're going to need something more in the future, but technology changes. Mm-hmm. So you spend more now in the hopes that technology doesn't change enough to get you to not need to buy again in the future, but that usually happens. So I think you get what's adequate now and then buy again when the LS12000 comes up.
Yeah, with a 5040, I mean, it doesn't even have a full 18 gigabit. It's got an 11 gigabit output, so you're very much limited on color space and frame rate.
Unless the LS12000 upgrade is imminent.
Yes.
Having gamed on a 5040 UB quite a bit myself, I wouldn't even run it at 4K. I just run it at 1080p and let the E-shift take over because I don't think the 5040 gained that much from native 4K. So that being said, you don't need much of a card.
I can't remember. Was it faster? I think it was faster in 4K over 1080 with the frame interpolation on, or not, but with E-shift on.
On fast, it didn't really seem to be an issue to me either way. For what it's worth, like
I gamed on it for a while before I upgraded too, and it always did fine. I mean, I never really had any problems with it.
I gamed on it for probably 3 years, on and off. And I think 1080p is fine for that projector. I don't think the E-shift on that particular model was good enough to worry about it too much. So
it was only a 2-way shifter, not a 4-way shifter.
So 1080p at 60 hertz is pretty easy in the graphic card realm. So to Ryan's point, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money necessarily. A 1080 Ti, for instance, would do that all day long, and that's probably $200 card at this point, or maybe even $150.
When the LS12000, you get that. And
now you're talking
changes, maybe 5000 series, or you wait even longer. I don't know when you're thinking about doing it. Then you're upgrading when the technology is relevant.
Even the new 5000 series. I mean, you've got that are coming out 2 weeks. Yeah, around 2 weeks.
End of January for the higher ones.
I actually don't have a graphics card in my computer right now because I just returned a 4080 Super that I had 1 day left of my return policy.
Poor Micro Center.
All the guys are sitting at the counter when I brought that back are like, let's send that over to be checked out real quick so we can get put on the in-house. They all wanted to snatch it up. There were no graphics cards in Micro Center. Like all the shelves were bare.
Why? What's doing that right now?
Because nobody's buying them.
No one's buying them because
Micro Center's
there's
not
none
buying
of them
them.
on there.
No. Micro Center's not buying them because they don't want to be stuck with old stock.
Right. They're all gone. Like those like 2 shelves were just completely bare, empty shelves. Yeah. It was crazy.
Huh.
Miguel Munez asks, how do I get rid of ghosting on my, I'm starting to notice on my JVC?
1 second. Rewind the last conversation. If 4K 60 hertz is what you want, I'd say a 5070 looks pretty enticing, or the 5070 Ti next round from doing a little bit of upgrade. They're In the realm of expensive graphics cards for performance, that's doing pretty well. Like the 5070 Ti beats a 3080 pretty much across the board in rasterization, and it will compete. A 5070 Ti will be about $750. It will best a 4090 when the trimmings are on, like DLSS, all the little
that's all
stuff,
BS. That's all fake frames.
all
There's
little
not.
stuff. But the
That's
rasterization,
complete
it will
lies.
be a 4070 Ti will be strong enough.
All right,
and with
NVIDIA.
DLSS trickery, it will be very nice. And it's $750.
If you like fake frames, you'll get a very fast
I've
frame rate out of
I've
it.
never even used it, so I don't know if I like it yet or not.
How do I get rid of ghosting? I'm starting to notice it on my JVC. Fun answer. You don't, because that's what we all complain about with their motion.
That's the LCOS trade-off.
Woo! No, it's one of their drawbacks. You get the benefits of native contrast, and then you get stuck with a lackluster motion engine.
Yeah, other than using it externally. And using it externally, it does have some advantages.
With my JVC, you'd play with that pixel response thing, and I couldn't ever tell a difference. Can you tell a difference with your NZ8, Bob?
Which pixel response thing?
There's like I don't even know what it's called now, but in the same menu area of the CMD, there's like a pixel
in the
speed or something.
CMD menu, there's
a couple different motion engine.
There's the
options.
low latency one in there. There's CMD, and then there's like I know what you're talking about. It's that one that's in the middle, and I don't think it does anything.
I couldn't tell. I mean, I couldn't tell anytime I tried to play with that with gaming or anything else. It didn't make any difference.
No,
at least to my eyes. So yeah, I mean, I'm with Ryan on that one. I think
match native frame rate. That's the biggest thing.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to sell my JVC was because gaming on it looked like a blur box.
Randy McMinn, do you guys use multiple mini DSP 2x4 HDs in your setup, and is it possible? I have 9 18-inch subs and 12-inch subs in Hover and Boss platform setups. Great show, guys. I watch every week.
There's nothing that would stop you from using multiple DSPs as long as you have a way to mirror the output.
You can only connect to one at a time. It doesn't, at least unless they've changed it. Like Sheldon bought several of them, and you could only you had to unhook the other ones to connect to one, is what his experience was at that time. Maybe they fixed it.
They all sit on the same like IP address or something?
You can't open them all up at once type thing is what his experience was.
You can't manually define its IP address? Or is the software
it's USB? The ones that he was going to use.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't recognize multiple. Now that might have changed, but he had the mini DSP 2x4 HD, so it's like the same model unless they've revised the hardware inside it.
But that's just configuration. I mean, once you get them configured, yeah, you could do it.
Well, it really annoyed him because his is always open and he's changing them. He wanted to have them both side by side and be able to.
Yeah, but that's Sheldon.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you're just setting them and forgetting them, you could do it. Absolutely. There's nothing preventing you from doing that.
You guys answer what you have on that one. I have a video that I'll link him to on mine for that.
No, I think you wait for the video. I don't really have anything else to add.
I don't even have a mini DSP. I think it's a
pain in the butt because you have multiple that you would have to configure.
But if you have that many subs in your system and you have the extra tactile and stuff, I mean, there's nothing that's not going to hurt you.
Oh, that's if you have passive.
If you search on my particular arrangement, if you search for tactile bass setup on the Jay Von England channel, you will find Sheldon and I running through a 2-hour overview of our setup, down to screenshotting everything and talking through everything. It's exactly what you're asking.
But if you wanted to do one unit, you could do a used QSC QSys 110F, and it would give you all the functionality that you need to do this.
How many channels does that have?
12 in, 12 out.
Well, he's got 20. What?
Yeah, but he doesn't have to send each one of the Hover its own.
Yeah, it just depends how his amps are. I mean, yeah, because you could daisy chain your amps on the output side if you're sending the same signal to them all.
There's a bunch of used options to do this too. A lot of pro stuff that you could use for this. You just got to know where to look.
And if you're running the same signal to every one of them, there's no reason you can't just Y split some of the options on the outputs as well. You don't need to have a discrete DSP channel for everyone if they're all the same.
Jonathan, did you post your link?
I'm doing it now. All right, it's in the comments.
Okay, good question. Tiki time. With the NFL playoffs tomorrow, How do each of you watch sports? I don't think the other two watch sports.
I don't.
On your
My
home
wife will
theater.
be watching stuff, but I'm not going to be.
Jonathan, do you?
Not until we get to the playoff games and stuff at the
They
end of the
start
year.
tomorrow.
Isn't that tomorrow?
I don't even follow it enough to know, but I'll watch the Super Bowl. I'll watch like the last couple games of the year. That's it. And
I
I
had a
and I
basketball
watch it on
game.
the Apple TV for what it's worth. It's just streaming.
I watch it on Apple TV. On YouTube TV. That's how I watch it. Not
That's
a very
my wife-
exciting answer.
That's
Looks
my wife
like-
will be watching it on YouTube TV on either on her phone or on one of the on the LG.
It looks terrible, but it gets the job done. Mark Bowering says, your openness is what makes you guys great and the only people I trust when seeing knowledge on AV products. Well, I appreciate that. I think we all try to be open because we really want and wish that that's what we had when we were starting.
Made lots of mistakes and wish no one else has to. Wants everyone else to be able to jump into the journey as easily as they can without making them also.
I do think that the mistakes are a valuable part of this journey, though.
Absolutely, but they're expensive.
Sometimes. Especially if you know Jonathan. And they
I
get
keep
really
replying
expensive.
as you on these darn comments because our things are intermixed. So you're saying things you don't know you're saying in the comments as me.
Okay. Just
I'm
keep
saying
it PG. Home Theater Denmark. Guys, quick question. What's your take on acoustic screens? What's your pick between woven and micro?
Now, there's an interesting topic that's really relevant recently.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a preference? I know both of your preferences, actually.
Okay, my preference is going to be from a video standpoint, not an acoustically transparent screen because you lose gain and you lose fidelity. If you want to have an acoustically transparent screen, most likely woven. You get some advantages from microperf of you get gain, but it's the expense of picture quality. If you sit far enough away, you may be able to get away with it. But as your image gets brighter, you can start to see the microperfs very easily on Ryan's projector. They're very easy to see. I
am sitting 9 feet from the screen, though.
You're sitting 9 feet from the screen, and you're at 300 or 250 nits, so it's very easy to pick up. I can see them at 10.5 feet on the JVC, so I don't like them either. The weaves, there's some very good ones. There's some other ones. You've got to watch the way the cut works with interactions with certain projectors because you can introduce a Murray on the screen and it won't look good.
But if you were going to choose one, what would you choose?
If I wanted an AT screen right now?
Yeah.
It depends on what my budget was. And I haven't seen, the problem is I haven't seen some of the other cheaper options in person. I know they exist and some of them have rated very well.
But based on what you've seen,
on the two that I've seen?
Well, you've technically seen 3.
What was the other one?
Jonathan's.
Oh, Jonathan's. I don't think Jonathan's looks bad. I can see the weave in it, and you get a higher gain out of it.
Mine, you're supposed to be at least 10 foot away, and I'm right on that fringe. So if you got good eyes, you'll see it.
Yeah, I can see the gain on your screen. I didn't see the gain. I don't see the screen weave on the Stewart Harmony or the Seymour Neo. I also didn't see it when we looked at samples on the Sievertson SAT 4K. I think that's what it is. I didn't see any of those. They all looked very good at distance. Supposedly the silver ticket base one is not a bad screen. I've just never seen it in person. I don't have a sample of it.
Jonathan?
I would choose woven, typically. I think the only micro perforated screen that I've seen that I like so far might be in the Stewart family.
Have you seen Ultra Perf yet?
I don't think so. Unless it was one of the M-Wave shows, I don't think so.
No.
Most people I know in the hobby and most rooms I've visited are using woven. So
it's better acoustically.
Yeah.
And like we did that question a while ago, which one do you prefer, video or audio? It's always audio.
Yep. If I was going to do acoustically transparent, I would definitely do woven. And from what I've seen in person, it'd be the Neo or the Harmony G3. They're both very good looking screens. The Sievertson, I don't know how it would interact with certain projectors on a Moray basis, so I can't say anything. I don't think we saw any issues when we looked
You
at that
better
one.
get Sievertson to send out a 160-inch screen so we can put them all side by side, and we can see them all.
We can order a big XY and a big. Well, we don't need that. We could do a 80-inch piece and hold it up. And
do you guys sometimes think that some of the screen discussion ends up being some of that mountain out of a molehill type level?
Sometimes.
I feel that way myself personally. I mean, like I just watched a video today on YouTube where the guy was comparing like 8 different screens with the Valerian projector, and he was trying to show which ones sparkle. And I'm watching it with YouTube, and I'm like, maybe it's more visible in person, because from here you look at 8 different screens of all different price points, and they look pretty darn similar.
I think especially when you're at white vinyl type screens. I mean, what are you chasing?
You get a little bit of difference in color. If it's a positive gain screen, you might get some sparkle, some hot spotting, depending upon how the color.
No, I get that, but I'm saying if they're all similar, I mean, what are you getting? You're just going from one manufacturer to another potentially.
And it could be anything from like $50 Joann's blackout cloth to some super manufacturer that costs $2,000 for the same amount of material. I mean, that's like a big variety of cost.
Well, I mean, I'd say that it doesn't matter that much until we've been seeing this stuff on the Christie. If that's not cut to the right angle for that particular projector, it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
But the second you get that screen dialed into the projector, it goes away and it looks beautiful.
But I mean, Jonathan, are you talking about something like a silver ticket vinyl versus EPV versus Seymour versus that kind of thing?
I don't know. I'm channeling you in here and saying I never saw a screen where I was like, that's a particularly bad screen, or I've never seen a screen where I've said that's a particularly good screen.
I mean, I had a Stewart. I've got it. Well, it's still in the ceiling, but I've got that Stewart Firehawk G4. And when I switched from the Epson to the JVC, I couldn't watch it anymore because of the laser sparkle.
I should put in notes that I'm talking white, right? Because I had some sort of high gain, like 1.5 something elite screen back in 2010 or something, and it was awful. I couldn't wait to get rid of it.
Yep.
But that's a high gain type thing. It had looked like crust reflectors were all over the screen. I'm removing that kind of stuff from the conversation, saying like that shouldn't even exist.
I had a silver ticket screen that I guess I technically returned because Ryan was throwing his away, and I took that instead. And I rescreened it. I think the replacement screen I bought was better, but it cost me $500 back when I did it to rescreen. I think it was a very good upgrade for that price. Now, spending $3,000 on it, I don't think that's worth it for a base gain white screen. For some of the specialty fabrics to get a better frame, there's some advantages there. The frame and assembly methods are very different between different types.
I think if you buy the
frame matters.
You buy the screen based on whatever type of thing you're trying to overcome. Do you need an ALR? Do you need positive gain? Do you need negative gain? Do you need gray? Do you need black? Do you need white? What are you trying to do? And then you get a screen that suits your environment.
Don't fall into this trap that you hear on the kind of marketing side that you marry your screen and you just kind of data projector. I mean, I'm going to be getting a third screen in 6 years, and I don't know if that's going to be the one. It kind of changes with your projector and the needs and the evolution of your room. So throwing a whole bunch of money for a screen, thinking that's going to be your forever screen, is not.
It can be,
but if it's not giving you a major advantage over something that's available at a lower cost, do you need it?
No,
probably not. The silver ticket stuff is great for the money.
I'll again say that to get to the bleeding edges of things and chase the last few percentage points, like if you really need a screen with positive gain and you want to minimize sparkle, see Stewart Studio Tech 130.
It's a good screen,
but it's more expensive, but it minimizes sparkle. Sparkle's still there, but if you did that same thing on another material, more sparkle. So it just comes down to what do you need to overcome, and then you buy a screen accordingly. Don't go chasing, this is white vinyl, this one's white vinyl, this one's going to look 10 times better. No,
but on that same point, though, I mean, look at your look at your brightness on a 1.1 gain. You know, that's what the silver ticket's probably going to wind up coming out to be if you measure it. You know, a 1.1 gain screen versus a 1.3 gain screen. Are you gaining enough brightness that it's even worth looking at? Probably not. We did this with the Epsons next to each other. One was 20% brighter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
maybe.
You had issues with the silver ticket frame rattling because of the center support.
Yeah.
And you don't get that on some of the other ones. The Stewart frame goes together very nice. Those are crazy solid frames. The Seymour frames are big, beefy frames. Some of the cheaper frames are they're going to be what they're going to be. If you can address the issues of them, you can be fine. The ALR screens, that's a whole different issue.
Big Jackass. Thoughts on Trinnov versus Marantz AV10. Marantz reliability and creature comforts like CEC versus Trinnov's feature set. Waveforming, remapping, etc. This Trinnov itch is hard to scratch. I have an AV10 944. Do you guys think there's an advantage?
What features do you not have right now that you want? Just because they're there doesn't mean you need them.
I mean, PEQ, there's a lot.
Right. That is the one big thing you get on that. And that's the
and
kind
waveforming.
And waveforming.
And FIR filters and optimizer and a bunch of other stuff. But are you going to use it?
I think I really like the Trinnov after spending some time with it. It is less convenient. It is the least convenient processor I've ever used. But it does a great job.
Bad.
No, I guess I really shouldn't say that. Once you get it set up and once you learn how to navigate the interface, it's actually very easy. It's less intuitive than a lot of the other ones.
I agree with what you said, Bob. I'm not a big Trinnov fan, but everyone has their own opinion. I had one in my room for a month, Ryan. I don't like the fact that it cuts off the first 5 seconds of anything that's Dolby Atmos, so I miss the first 5 seconds no matter what you do.
That's because you're resyncing your audio through it. But that does not happen to me at all because I'm extracting my audio out of the room and it stays in the same carrier frequency all the time.
But it happens on consumer devices like Apple TV and Amazon Fire Stick. And
no, but because I pull my audio off and run it through the same HDMI carrier signal, it never changes.
Nobody does that though, Bob.
But that's
that's a way you can get around that. So my audio comes up immediately. My video is what takes longer to switch. My audio is instantaneous.
I mean, I'm not going to buy a particular device so I can use an expensive processor when the mainstream stuff doesn't work. That doesn't make sense to me.
I bought the Vroom because I couldn't get 4K. I couldn't pull audio out of an HDMI 2.1 signal on a HDMI 2.0 processor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm all for about ease for use and convenience and efficiency and stuff, and mainstream stuff needs to work. That's my opinion. I also don't like that the Trinnov doesn't have an on-screen GUI. I know it has a really nice web page, and that's cool. But I want to have an on-screen GUI. I like that on my AV10. It doesn't have HDMI CEC. That's unforgivable to me. I want HDMI CEC. Otherwise, it's good. But I'll tell you, after using the AV10 for like a month, when I switched back, after using Trinnov for a month, and I switched back to my AV10, it was like a breath of fresh air. It's like this just works better. That's my opinion. Like this is more mainstream. This is faster. This is like, I'm not missing my music on the first 10 seconds. The remote works. The HDMI CEC controls everything. Like breath of fresh air. It's like
the remote, isn't it? Like the remote doesn't work because it's an IR remote and the processor's in the closet. So I can't use it. I got to have the web page open.
The remote is jankety. That Trinnov remote is jankety.
I think it does a really good job. I really like the way it sounds. I have not had a chance to explore waveforming because I don't have that yet.
2 different continents talking about.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wasn't impressed with that.
As far as bugs and issues, I've experienced no bugs or issues with the exception of Amazon Music, and I don't know if it's an Amazon Music issue or a Fire Stick issue or what. When I listen to Atmos music on Amazon Music on the Fire Stick, if it switches from an Atmos track to a PCM track or 2-channel track, I get 2 seconds of audio and it cuts out and I can't get it to come back.
Look at this remote. Marantz AV10, aluminum, nice backlighting. All the buttons have a nice, super tactile click, like the nicest remote I've ever had. Show me the AV10 or show me the turn off remote. Jankety, soft, mushy buttons, no backlighting, like a $3 remote. Jankety.
Here's the Lindorf remote. I love it. It's
Yeah.
It's RF. It works great. But you know what? I'll tell you, I use 3 buttons on this
You
remote.
guys and your remotes.
Well, I use 4 buttons.
remote.
I use the mute button in case anything ever goes wrong. I use the volume up and down button and the power button, and that's it.
You guys are trying to shoehorn Trinov into a position that it's never really in. I mean,
No,
most
it's not,
Trinov
because it should be
deployments,
combined with a
IP
control system.
control.
Right. And that's exactly what it needs.
Yeah.
And it works very well and does what it does. If you want to have a complex system and you want to do all sorts of flexibility and setup and configuration, it's great.
Trinov
I like the sound. I don't have anything negative to say on the sound. It's the creature comforts that
Trinov is designed for a professional integrator to put in. It's what it's
Correct.
made to do. It's Marantz and Denon are not.
It's the Crestron of AVRs. I mean, it's not meant to be user friendly. Things are where they are.
What's with the 1980s overlay that it has?
It's old.
Come on now.
They're currently it's almost out. They're working on a refresh.
They shouldn't even put that on there. It's embarrassing at this point.
It's old. That's from when it first came out.
It looks like a LED clock radio from the 1980s, and it's white to boot, and it's like in the corner. It's not. Oh my gosh!
It gets it done.
No, it doesn't. That's exactly what I'm saying. It doesn't get it done.
Yes, it does.
Horrible.
Sonically, I really like it.
I need to have you come over and listen to Wolf Totem, man. It is.
No, I'm sonically. I really like it, and when I switch back to the Lindorf, I'll have to maybe try to set up some comparison or something on this. But I've been very happy with the result that I've gotten, and I know that I can't do any of the Lindorf is more consumer driven on its interface. It's just a set it and forget it. I've always been pleased with the sound, but you can't tweak it. They just don't have the options.
There's tweaker's paradise in Trinov.
There is.
Mm-hmm. It's designed for a professional integrator.
It's unforgivable that they got to fix before I'd have interest.
But again, all those features are not things that the majority of the people who buy them are ever going to touch. They're the things that only the integrator is going to use.
That thing's going to get set, and it's never going to be touched again. That's what's going to happen with a Trinov. It's what happens with a Storm. They get set by the professional integrator into a home, into a theater. The customer uses the theater, interacts with their button. They have no idea what the majority of the stuff in the rack does, and they just enjoy the experience. That's what it is.
Yeah, they're for 2 people. They're for crazy power users, for nuts home theaters, and for integrators.
But you know what's super nice on the Trinov is I can go into that jank page that you're talking about.
The web page is nice.
And I can just turn on pink noise for any channel that I want. Full spectrum pink noise immediately.
Very nice.
And it is awesome.
Extremely nice.
The feature sets that are there and the control that you have, phenomenal. Just, it looks like it's built out of a 1980s Radio Shack as far as the web page is concerned. But that is getting updated. Like there is how it looks is getting updated. So if you need that stuff, long story short, Big Jack, if you need the control and the granularity from the ground up and you need all of these things or can take advantage of them, things like this, when you start getting into Storm and then Trinov, there's no other place to go. You are at the end. There is nowhere else that you are going to go. You have reached the zenith.
Come close. Put your ears next to your speakers. I'm going to give you some ASMR. The Marantz measures better.
It doesn't matter.
What's got a higher SINAD score that we can't hear?
It doesn't matter.
It's all above our human hearing.
It doesn't matter.
Didn't you just talk about a little while ago how we couldn't hear the difference anyway?
I know, but I just want. I
just
agree.
wanted to dog it. That's all he wanted. That's all he wanted. He's just like, I'm gonna dog it. That's all he wanted. He got it in there. So if you need it and you can take advantage of it, it's worth it. Shoot me an email. We'll get you hooked up, or at least talk about it to see if it's a good fit for you. I think we've reached the end, and Jonathan stopped starring questions. I haven't seen much of any other questions.
Well, there's a lot of conversation in here tonight.
There is. We had 120 people at some point, so that's exciting. It's nice to see the numbers going up. I'm just happy that people tolerate us. I don't know if tolerate's the right word.
What is this? MW says something I didn't hear before. The Marantz used to measure better new last year. Trinoff changed DAX. So he's okay, I read it now. He's saying the Trinoff now measures better than the Marantz. I haven't seen that on ASMR.
Are the new Storm DAX out yet?
ASR.
Or is that still coming later this year?
I don't think they're out yet.
I'd be curious to see how those measure too. I don't think they're going to be audibly different.
Doesn't
but I
matter.
think they're going to throw a higher score up there just because they can.
Well, yeah, they did it, and they rightfully should have done it. But it doesn't matter. So they're making upgrades. They do listen. Trinoff and Storm both listen to their customer bases.
You guys say the remote doesn't really matter. It matters to me enough where I saw the 6800 remote, the Denon 6800 remote, and that almost single-handedly makes me not want to change out, even if I can't hear the difference, because that 6800 remote is jank. It's crap.
The absolute best remote I ever had for a product was my Class A SSP 25. It was this piece of aluminum. It had aluminum buttons that had a nice heavy click. It was big. It was solid. It just felt like a brick in your hand. It was amazing. And I never touched it because I programmed the 6 features I used into it into a $10 universal remote. I bought it like Walmart.
Oh no.
So I could control everything from one remote.
There's a look and feel aspect that I like. I like the Apple TV remote, that little aluminum nice piece of finesse that goes in your hand.
Turn up the volume? Did you turn up the volume? Did you turn up the volume?
I like this Marantz remote, like the touch and feel. It gives you a pride of ownership, a little sense of worth in your hand.
You know, I say
Jonathan's in the corner, just picking up the AV10. I like how you feel.
When true to point, when I had those things all on the table lined up side by side, the Marantz AV10 looks like a Ferrari compared to like a Walmart tub for the other ones.
Or the JVC remote. The JVC remote is like...
I'm just talking about the chassis. Like the actual
JVC remote doesn't even work a lot of times.
No, 3 buttons. I have to push the power button like 10 times to get the thing to turn on or to come out of standby.
Absolutely.
It's not a great remote.
No, and I figured out, I think that JVC remote conflicts with the laser light. Because if you aim it off to the side a little bit, it works better than if you aim it right at the projector.
I get the best response by actually aiming it at the screen and bouncing it back.
Yeah, probably same thing.
But I mean, I don't use any of the remotes. Honestly, I want to have my phone up, and I've got 3 different like web page interfaces. I've got my Vroom, I've got the Trinov, I've got the Mad VR, I've got
worst remote ever designed.
I don't hate this one. You hate it?
I don't want to do this. I'm not using a Wii.
The LG remote. Yeah, I
do this, and now it's going all over my screen.
Anytime you move it and the cursor starts moving on its own, that drives me nuts. My kids love playing that little like slice the rope game. Have you played that on the TV?
No.
There's games that use the remote as like a Wii controller, and you can kind of like slice a rope. My kids found that and they love it.
Mine's not coming. I have to, I saw it for a second and then it went away again.
No, when it starts moving and the cursor starts jumping, I hate that.
I don't mind that remote.
It's so annoying. It's almost as bad as this. This is a good remote.
I like that remote.
It's a good remote. After you turn off the damn like slide functions and touch crap.
Yeah, you got to turn off the touchpad.
No.
It's too fast or too weird or
something.
Don't
reinvent the remote. It does what it needs to do. I don't need all of this other BS in it. It just screws everything up.
Anyway. I liked the old Control 4 remote.
Yeah.
Back
Paul
when I still
R.
had
saying
that.
He loves the LG remote. Well, you're just wrong, objectively. On so many levels, Paul. Just, it's not good.
Honestly, it works, the LG remote.
It works.
I just don't want it to move.
Can you try? You probably can turn that off on the LG.
Maybe. I don't know.
Somewhere. LG's user interface just continues to get worse.
That's also true.
It's not as bad as Samsung's, but it's getting there. All right. So we're doing whatever that German movie is.
Downfall.
So
Do you wanna
Downfall
do
next week.
3D music next week?
That'd be fun.
You
But
mean
well,
like
the
immersive
topic was
music and stuff?
2D, was two-channel music that sounds
Three-dimensional.
3D.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
I
do that.
really like that idea.
That
That should be a good listening assignment for everyone else too. Find the stuff that the 2-channel music that you like that sounds like it's spatial.
Are we going to do Friday or Saturday?
I like Saturdays, but I don't know what's on the schedule.
Jonathan?
I don't know what my schedule is, but I don't think I'm booked either time, so it should work either way.
Well, pick one.
Bob, do you have a limitation?
I don't have a limitation. Either is fine.
Jonathan's up to you.
Let's talk. Let me talk to my wife and see if we have.
Okay.
We'll get back to you guys. You'll see
Didn't
it
happen.
scheduled. You'll see it scheduled.
You'll see it the day of. 'Cause that's evidently how
Nothing like planning and preparation on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. Okay. So Downfall, 2D, 3D music.
2-channel music that sounds like it's 3D.
Yes. And we'll go from there. Well, guys, it was a great stream. 3 hours. We haven't had a 3-hour stream in a while. But 3 hours.
Some people message me and like, I was going to watch your show, but I just can't commit to 3 hours, and they just don't watch it. So there's that.
Well, we don't always go 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, can't always go for 2 seconds, and you can't always go for 3 hours. Sometimes you just got to be okay with what's in the middle.
Family show. Stop that.
Just gotta be okay with what you get. I did not do anything. There was no innuendo there. I don't know what you're talking about.
It was traveling that way.
That's where your mind took it, Jonathan. Go clean some carpet.
Oh boy.
If you watched long enough, you would get it. Okay, so we're going to leave it there. We're doing Downfall next week. We're doing some stream on Friday or Saturday, and we're doing 2-channel music that sounds 3-dimensional. So, guys, stay safe out there. If you need anything, send an email to web@madvr.com, not madvr, web@hometheatersavants.com, and we'll get you taken care of. At least put you in the correct direction. Until next time, my name's Ryan, joined as always by Bob and Jonathan, and we will see you next Friday or Saturday. Be on the lookout for when that's going to be. Have a good one. Stay safe.